Chapter 3285. Southern Lord Tianzuan. Yishuan's expression became dignified. He naturally understood what these three words represented. It was a huge shadow in his heart. Although he didn't know how many heavenly venerables there were in the Fortune God dynasty, it was obvious that there were more than a few. Even so, the four heavenly venerables of the Fortune God dynasty were able to firmly control the situation. Other heavenly venerables didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of them. They must be the best among them, a terrifying existence that surpassed other heavenly venerables. Now you should know what kind of trouble you've provoked. Among the East, South, North, and West great heavenly venerables, Southern heavenly venerables can be considered as a newly ascended heavenly venerable. His experience is the lowest, and his cultivation time isn't even as long as mine. Yet, he is ranked as Southern Heavenly Venerable. He has many followers in the Fortune God dynasty, and the Eaglehorn Emperor is merely one of them. If he wants to find trouble with you, then you're in big trouble. The battled arch looked at Yi Shiwen with a faint smile on his face. It was as if he was waiting to see a joke. How could this Yi Shiwen be so daring? He could kill anyone he wanted to. The arrow has to be fired, Yi Shiwen said, but his expression became more determined. He didn't know that there was such a terrifying existence behind Eaglehorn Emperor. Even if he knew, he had no choice but to kill. Everything was as he said. The arrow had to be fired. He had no choice because he didn't want to cause trouble for those people. Those people wanted to kill him and take away his king-level dragon vein. Good. The arrow has to be fired. The Eaglehorn Emperor coveted your king-level dragon vein. So what if he's dead? It's not a big deal. Moreover, there's an unspoken rule among the various forces on the path of creation. That is, no one is allowed to investigate anything that happens on the path of creation, at least not openly. Therefore, you don't have to worry that Southern Lord Tianzuan will personally cause you trouble. At most, someone else will deal with you. Moreover, he doesn't have a time to do so now. The Battle Emperor clapped his hands and laughed. He seemed to be affected by Yi Shiwen's words. Yi Shiwen heaved a sigh of relief. The deterrence brought about by a figure like Lord Nan far exceeded that of the heaven-devouring Demon King and Lord Divine Fire. If he were to make a move, Yi Shiwen could only run away. However, if he did not personally make a move, then the pressure would be much less. However, I don't think you're saying this for no reason, Brother Battle Emperor. What are you trying to say? Yi Shiwen asked directly. Actually, Heavenly Venerable Nan's matter is both troublesome and not troublesome at the same time. As long as there is someone who can fight against Heavenly Venerable Nan, then your matter could be resolved by paying a small price. The Battle Emperor said as he stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen immediately understood the meaning behind the Battle Thearcha's words. The Battled Arch wanted to recruit him on behalf of the super big shot behind the scenes. Originally, Yi Shiwen was not at such a level. At most, the Battled Arch was enough to recruit him. However, as Yi Shiwen's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, it was no longer possible for the Battled Arch to recruit Yi Shiwen. The Battled Arch represented the will of that big shot. Yi Shiwen just didn't know which big shot it was. However, it could be assumed that only one of those few outstanding figures could fight against Lord Nan. Yi Shiwen sighed slightly. If he wanted to get rid of this fate, stepping into the heavenly venerable realm was the only way. At that time, he would be able to stand tall and not have to care about others. May I know who Brother Battled Arch is representing to talk to me? Yi Shiwen asked. Naturally, it's His Highness Eastern Heavenly Venerable. Otherwise, do you think you could easily obtain the position of the Four Prefectures Patrol Envoy? This is also tacitly agreed by the Eastern Heavenly Venerable, said the Battled Arch. Eastern Heavenly Venerable? Yi Shiwen silently muttered these three words. He was also an extremely ancient emperor. It was rumored that he was already a heavenly venerable when the Fortune God dynasty was founded. His seniority was even higher than that of the Battled Arch. Needless to say, Southern Heavenly Venerable was the leader of the four great heavenly venerables. It was no wonder that the Battled Arch was able to obtain the position of the Four Prefectures Patrol Envoy for him in the Eastern region. One must know that even the Fortune God capital couldn't assign the big prefectures without the tacit consent of the heavenly venerables of the various regions. Even the fortune god capital was the sole ruler of the fortune god dynasty in name. Yes, that's right. It's the Eastern Heavenly Venerable. Of course, this isn't asking you to become a follower of the Eastern Heavenly Venerable. Being his slave has already touched the bottom line of the Emperor. No one would ask such a request from a talented person like you. That would be an insult to you. Explain the battled arch. Then, I want to know what's going on? Asked Yi Shiwen. Originally, this matter wasn't considered a secret among the emperors. However, Taoist martial emperor, you've come from the myriad heavens. Moreover, you've only been here for a short period of time, so you might not know about it, said the battled arch. In fact, the four great heavenly venerables of the fortune god dynasty aren't so much titles. It's better to say that it's a kind of position. It's a position that was conferred by the fortune god lord in the past. He's in charge of the four great regions, said the battled arch. Therefore, this batch of four great heavenly venerables of the East, South, West, and North isn't actually the first batch of four great heavenly venerables. Only now did Yi Shiwen know that there was such a secret. However, even the southern heavenly venerables of the East, South, West, and North had been in the position for more than 10 million years. In a long passage of time, all the truth would be covered with a layer of dust. Only old antiques like the battled arch, who had existed since the beginning of the fortune god dynasty, could possibly know all the secrets. Therefore, anyone can become one of the four great heavenly venerables. However, many years ago, there weren't just four great heavenly venerables of the East, South, West, and North. Instead, there were five great heavenly venerables. The central region also had a middle heavenly venerable. He was the ruler of the central region after the fortune god lord. However, many years ago, the middle heavenly venerables disappeared without a trace. This position was left empty. The outside world slowly forgot about the existence of the middle heavenly venerables, said the battled arch. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. He seemed to have grasped something. He quickly asked, "Fellow Taoist battled arch, do you mean that the four great heavenly venerables want to enter the fortune god capital and become the next middle heavenly venerables?" Yi Shiwen immediately sorted out a lot of connections. So that's how it is. No wonder. If the four great heavenly venerables of the East, South, West, and North were just titles, then there was no need to fight for them. Just like the so-called 10 great emperors. Although they were glorious, those like the battled arch who weren't part of the four great emperors were equally famous. No one thought that he was inferior to the 10 great emperors. However, if the four great heavenly venerables of the East, South, West, and North were positions and not titles, then it was completely different. Once one entered the fortune god capital and became the middle heavenly venerables, he would practically become the ruler of the entire fortune god dynasty when the fortune god lord was nowhere to be seen. His status would leap up, and he would become the ruler above the other three great heavenly venerables. The battled arch glanced at Yi Shiwen. A trace of appreciation flashed in his eyes. He could understand the intentions of the four great heavenly venerables with just a little bit of information. This kind of thinking was indeed well-deserved. He was a smart person. "That's right," said the battled arch. "The Eastern Heavenly Venerables also wants to enter the fortune god capital and become the middle heavenly venerables. However, it's not that easy to become a middle heavenly venerables. It's not that easy to suppress the other heavenly venerables. As the saying goes, a just cause enjoys abundant support. You should understand this principle. As for those of us who support the Eastern Heavenly Venerables, we don't need to do anything for him. We only need to show our inclinations. When the time comes, we will naturally be protected by the Eastern Heavenly Venerables." Yi Shiwen understood everything. If the Eastern Heavenly Venerables wanted to enter the fortune god capital and become the next middle heavenly venerables, it seemed impossible to suppress the other heavenly venerables with his strength alone. He could only rely on the strength of everyone. A just cause enjoys abundant support. If the current fortune god dynasty was a chaotic world of warlords, then the Eastern Heavenly Venerables would have to obtain the support of other small warlords if he wanted to enter the capital and become the emperor. The strength of these small warlords was indeed nothing compared to the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. However, when their numbers reached a certain level, it was enough to change the world and affect the structure. Now, with Yi Shiwen's strength and the human race standing behind him, he was indeed a stable small warlord. Although the Eastern Heavenly Venerables didn't think that Yi Shiwen could be of great help, he could still play a part. He didn't want Yi Shiwen to rely on the subordinates of other Heavenly Venerables because of this. All right, I can agree. Yi Shiwen made a prompt decision without any hesitation. He didn't have many choices under the rule of the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. Moreover, the Eastern Heavenly Venerables didn't have any malice towards him. He didn't need to rely on the other Heavenly Venerables to survive. Moreover, it was only a tendentious support. The Eastern Heavenly Venerables could also help him offset the pressure from the Southern Heavenly Venerables. It was a win-win situation. Mutual benefits could only last for a long time. Of course, he didn't completely rely on the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. The Eastern Heavenly Venerables naturally couldn't give him complete protection. At most, they could only offset the threat from the Southern Heavenly Venerables. Yi Shiwen had to take care of everything else. However, this was already enough for Yi Shiwen. That's great. Then, we will work together in the future, said the Battle Emperor with a hearty laugh. There was going to be another heavyweight in their camp. An expert at the level of the 10 great emperors wasn't something that could be obtained easily. With this, their chances of winning had increased by a little. He also hoped that the Eastern Heavenly Venerables could enter the Fortune God capital. In that case, he would also benefit greatly. Otherwise, with his status, it was impossible for him to run around for the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. Then, please take care of me in the future. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said. In addition, does Senior Battle Emperor have any news about the Night Emperor? Chapter 3286. In addition, Senior Battle Emperor, do you have any news about the Night Emperor? Yi Shiwen immediately asked the question that he was most concerned about. It was because he really wanted to know where Yi Huang was. Yi Huang had repeatedly set up ambushes, and many people had been chasing after him. Yi Shiwen had even been seriously injured and had escaped on the verge of death. There was no room for reconciliation between the two sides. It was inevitable that they would fight to the death. Previously, Yi Shiwen could only barely fight against the Night Emperor. Naturally, it was not suitable to fight him head-on. However, now that the situation was completely reversed, it was naturally time to settle the score with the Night Emperor. Taoist Martial Emperor, you are impatient. The Battle Emperor looked at Yi Shiwen with a faint smile. He was slightly shocked. From Yi Shiwen's performance, it was clear that he was fully prepared to kill the Night Emperor. In that case, just how powerful was his current strength? It was simply unimaginable. He had killed the Eagle Horn Emperor previously, and it was definitely not because of luck, nor was it because he had used some powerful secret technique like some people had said. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen, who used a secret technique, should be hiding to heal his injuries. It was impossible for him to mention looking for the Night Emperor. He has tried to kill me time and time again. Naturally, I won't let him go. Now is the perfect time to get rid of him as well. Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent. His tone revealed an incomparable killing intent. It was even stronger than the killing intent he had for the Eagle Horn Emperor. I came to you this time, in addition to bringing a message for the Eastern Heavenly Lord, mainly for the Night Emperor. My first goal this time is to kill him. The Battle Emperor's expression was equally stern. He worked for the Fortune God dynasty, and the Night Emperor was an outstanding Emperor-level creature. Both of them stood on the opposite side. That's for the best. During this time, I have actually been paying attention to his traces. However, I have not been able to find him. I have also secretly investigated, but there is no news of him, said Yi Shiwen. Where the hell is he? Taoist Martial Emperor, of course, you won't be able to get an answer. Because the emperors you have investigated actually do not know, said the Battle Emperor. As he spoke, he flipped his palm slightly. Suddenly, a wave surged out. After the wave passed, a clear crystal the size of a thumb appeared on his palm. This is, Yi Shiwen said in a somewhat puzzled manner. In his opinion, This crystal was revealing an inexplicably familiar aura, and he couldn't help but feel shocked. This crystal is called the Law Crystal, the battled arch said. It is formed from the laws of heaven and earth. Law crystals form from the laws of heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's pupils contracted slightly because he finally remembered why he had such an inexplicably familiar aura. It was because he had seen a similar crystal before. It was the type of crystal that could be seen everywhere on the path of creation. It was a crystal that had countless laws entangled together. Even an Emperor Lord's attack would find it difficult to leave a mark on it. That's right, it's formed by the laws of the world. The battled arch said, "Do you know why the creation god dynasty is putting in so much effort to open up and stabilize the crack on the path of creation? Is it really for that illusory opportunity? That's naturally impossible." Yi Shiwen shook his head. From the beginning, he knew that the objective of these Emperor Lords wasn't that illusory opportunity. It wasn't because the opportunity wasn't precious, but because it was too illusory. It was so illusory that no one except the legendary heavenly venerate of creation could obtain that opportunity. If these Emperor Lords had entered with this goal in mind, the probability of them returning empty-handed was almost 100%. They are looking for the Law Crystal. In fact, even among the Emperor Lords, only a few people know about this. Most people think that they are entering to obtain the legendary opportunity. Only a small number of people know that they are here for the Law Crystal, said the battled arch. May I ask, Brother Battled Arch, what exactly is this Law Crystal? Why are so many people putting in so much effort to enter the path of creation just to obtain this Law Crystal? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but ask. Good question. The answer to this question has to start from the difference between an Emperor Lord and a Heavenly Venerate. Do you know what the biggest difference between an Emperor Lord and a Heavenly Venerate is? Asked the battled arch. Yi Shiwen shook his head. He knew very little about this aspect. So far, he only knew that Heavenly Venerates were very strong. Even when Pan-Tian was at the lowest point of his life, he could still easily slaughter those Emperor Lords. This was proof of this. The battled arch said, "Then let me put it this way. A Emperor Lord should be the supreme existence between heaven and earth. It doesn't matter which world they are in. They are already the most perfect life forms. They are existences that have already utilized the laws of heaven and earth to the extreme. However, even so, an Emperor Lord can only utilize the laws." Yi Shiwen seemed to have faintly understood something. Finally, one day, some Emperor Lords weren't satisfied with the status quo. They began to attempt to make further breakthroughs, and the direction they chose was to modify the laws, said the battled arch slowly. And the people who truly succeeded were the so-called Heavenly Venerates. Modify the laws. Yi Shiwen's pupils shrank slightly. He had already stepped into the peak of the ninth realm. He was at the true pinnacle of the Emperor Lords. He naturally understood how amazing the so-called modification of the laws was. All of his current techniques utilized the laws to the extreme. Whether it was the sword law or the time law, they had already reached a rather shocking level. It was already very difficult for him to improve his strength. This was because his utilization of the laws had already reached the limit. It was impossible for him to improve further. To put it bluntly, the strength of an Emperor Lord was the difference in the utilization of the laws. He was able to kill Eagle Horn Emperor when he had just stepped into the peak of the ninth realm. This was because he had simultaneously cultivated 3,000 martial arts. In terms of utilization of the laws, he was far superior to Eagle Horn Emperor. However, it was also because of this that he also felt a kind of bottleneck. It was as if he had reached the end of the road. What to do? Originally, he was still diffusing. However, the word of the battled arch today opened up a whole new path for him. Yes, since there was no road, then he would break through it. Just like how he had cultivated to the Emperor Lord realm, he would break through all barriers and open up a supreme road that belonged solely to him. If there was no road, then he would open up a way out. If there was a wall in front, then he would collapse the wall. Then, the road in front would become wider again. No, if it's about modifying the laws, I can also do it with my ability. With my strength, my words are the law. It's not difficult for me to make golden words, said Yishiwen. He thought of his own ability. It could almost be said that he was pointing a deer to a horse. If he said that the fire was cold, then the flame must be cold. If he said that the water was hot, then it must be hot. His words were the law. Since he had already done it, why couldn't he step into the heavenly master realm? Your ability has indeed touched the edge of modifying the laws. It is also the predecessor of this path. However, after all, it is not a true modification. Instead, it is a forced change with your own strength. Within the scope of your domain, naturally what you say is the law. If you want water to flow higher, then it must flow higher. However, what if you withdraw your domain? What if it is outside of your domain? Then, what else can you say is the law? The battle emperor retorted, "You can't do all these. However, the heavenly masters can. The laws that they have modified will exist forever. It won't change even if they are gone. This is the ability of the heavenly masters." Yishiwen's eyes widened. He suddenly understood. This concept was like computer programming. The application of the laws was like various kinds of software. Through various kinds of software, he could achieve various kinds of computer abilities. Even if some things seemed to go against common sense, such as the water flowing higher, the fire being cold, etc., they were still using the software to achieve this effect. His essence hadn't changed. It was just the situation that was displayed. However, the Heavenly Master could directly change the contents of the programming. He could directly make the water flow higher. The fire was cold. He didn't need to use the software to achieve his intentions. This was truly terrifying. Although the final result seemed to be the same between the two, there was actually a huge difference in essence. Once he stopped the operation of the software, all the changes would disappear without a trace. It would return to its original appearance. However, the data that had been modified by the Heavenly Master would exist forever. It wasn't difficult to understand this principle. However, it was almost impossible to do it. It was like many people were very proficient in using various kinds of software. They could use the software to complete all kinds of instructions. However, they would be dumbfounded if they were asked to program the same thing from the very beginning. It was impossible. This was because they couldn't come into contact with the most basic programming data. They couldn't learn this programming technique. Even Yishiwen was no exception. Everything he knew and learned was based on the various applications of the laws that existed on the basis of the existence of the laws. And if I want to have that kind of ability, I must have this law crystal. Yishiwen was equally intelligent. It wasn't difficult for him to guess this conclusion from the Battle Emperor's words. He suddenly understood everything. If modifying the laws was said to be like programming, then this law crystal was like a programming textbook. It could allow the Emperor Lord to comprehend the key to modifying the laws. That's right. This law crystal is the key to comprehend the step of modifying the laws. This is because this is the most basic law. Under normal circumstances, we have to comprehend the laws in a mysterious way. Different people have different comprehensions, and the manifestation of the laws is also different. However, the law crystal is different. It's the manifestation of the laws. It's the most primitive state. Only with the law crystal can we have the opportunity to comprehend it. Only then can we have the opportunity to step into the supreme heavenly master realm, said the Fortune Emperor Lord. Chapter 3287. Normally, the laws are invisible and formless. They can only be understood and not explained. No one knows what the laws really look like. Only under special circumstances will they materialize and form the law crystal. That is the collision of the laws. The Battled Arch said, "I'm sure you've discovered that the crystals that can be seen everywhere on the path of creation are actually formed by the collision of nomological laws. The collision of multiple nomological laws eventually forms this strange phenomenon. However, we can't use these crystals because there are too many nomological laws contained within them. They're too messy and can't be used at all. However, there will be some nomological laws that collide with the nomological laws of the path of creation. After materialization, they will not fuse with the nomological laws. Instead, they will form a separate entity. These are nomological crystals. They are the purest crystallization of nomological laws. There are no other impurities in them. With these nomological crystals, we will have the opportunity to touch the nomological laws and modify the supreme great Tao. We will be able to reach the celestial Lord realm. I see. Thank you, Brother Battle Emperor, for enlightening me. Yishuan cupped his hands and made a deep bow. This was the so-called true teachings. If the Battle Emperor didn't explain these things to him, he wouldn't know how many tens of thousands of years he would have to rely on himself to figure out the principles behind these things. Therefore, the Battle Emperor was worthy of such a big bow. Brother Martial Emperor, you are too polite. I have only taken a step forward on the path of cultivation, said the Battle Emperor with a wave of his hand. You have also discovered that whether it is in the myriad heavens or in the fortune god dynasty, the universal laws should be the same. Only on the path of creation, there are different systems of laws. Therefore, it is only on the path of creation that the laws of different systems can collide. It is also only here that one can find the law crystals. This is the real reason why many emperors have come here. Brother Battle Emperor, do you mean that the Night Emperor is now looking for this kind of law crystal? Yishuan immediately understood what the Battle Emperor meant. Yes, they're looking for this kind of law crystal. However, not every place on the path of creation has this kind of law crystal, said the Battle Emperor. Yishuan paused and then said, if I am not wrong, this kind of law crystal can't be used all the time. If this kind of law crystal could be used for a long time, there would be no need for the Fortune God dynasty to send people here. This was because the path of creation had opened more than once or twice, and the Fortune Divine dynasty had probably already obtained a large number of law crystals. In fact, those who needed law crystals were only super existences who had stepped into the peak of the Emperor realm. Even with the Fortune Divine dynasty's foundation, there shouldn't be many such existences. In this case, it should be enough. Why would they take the risk to enter the path of creation? Although the path of fortune didn't seem to have any terrifying existences, it was still filled with dangers. It was impossible for the Fortune Divine dynasty's sovereigns to be unaware of this. Yes, if you want to use the law crystal to comprehend it, you must let your spirit explore it. If you stay too long, the balance of the laws inside might be affected, and the crystal will instantly collapse, said the Battle Emperor. Don't be fooled by the fact that the law crystal looks extremely hard on the outside. In fact, there is a subtle balance inside. Even the slightest movement of one of the laws might cause the law crystal to collapse. Because of this, the law crystal is so precious. The conditions for its formation are very harsh. Although the crystals you see in the outside world are formed from the collision of laws, in reality, they can't be used by us at all. So in reality, the law crystal is a kind of consumable. There aren't many places on the path of creation that can produce it. Only in a huge basin can such a law crystal exist. This place originally didn't have a name. Later on, we named it the Valley of Crystals, said the Battle Emperor confidently. And according to the information we received, the Night Emperor is in this Valley of Crystals. Logically speaking, with your cultivation, you can cover the entire continent with a single thought, no matter how big it is. How can he escape from your perception? Asked Yishuan. The divine sense of an Emperor Lord could cover a vast area. It could cover a continent, a world, or even a universe. Right now, it was just a huge basin. Why would he need to obtain information? Dear Martial Emperor, you might not know this, but the Crystal Valley is only the size of an ordinary continent in terms of size. However, there are many layers of it. The space is chaotic, and time is unstable. In fact, there are even extreme dangers. The Battle Emperor said with a bitter smile. He naturally understood what Yishuan was puzzled about. Extreme dangers? What kind of dangers? Asked Yishuan. He also wanted to know what kind of dangers the Battle Emperor would call extreme dangers. According to our speculations after coming here many times, the Valley of Crystals is likely to be left behind by a super war. Even now, the space and time inside are still fragmented. Even with our cultivation, encountering fragmented space and time is still an extremely troublesome matter. However, it's not a big deal, explained the Battle Emperor with a dignified expression. The most terrifying thing is that we'll encounter the battle wills left behind by the super experts. Even a random will might be able to heavily injure us. Moreover, some places are even more dangerous. We might be killed by a few dozen wills the moment we enter. There are also some monsters that are born from the blood essence of some super experts, and they're extremely terrifying. Even I have to be careful when I enter those places. Last time, a 10 great emperor monarch entered, and he was killed. Then, he was replaced by someone else. I understand. Have you found his location? Asked Yi Shiwen. Not yet, but soon. We have gathered a few divination experts here. They're doing their best to calculate his whereabouts. However, his cultivation is very profound. It's not easy to calculate his whereabouts. It will take some time, said the Battle Emperor. This is also the reason why I have the time to look for you now. I understand. I will also go to the Valley of Crystals. When you find his whereabouts, inform me immediately, said Yi Shiwen. He was determined to kill the Night Emperor. However, he had no choice. He also knew that it wouldn't be easy to calculate the whereabouts of the Night Emperor with his own strength. The Night Emperor's cultivation wasn't weak. Moreover, in the path of fortune, all the mysteries of heaven were shielded very well. In this place, even the Emperor Lords were like blind. It was impossible for them to know everything in the world with just a thought like they did in the outside world. Cooperating with the Battle Emperor was undoubtedly the best way. Both parties had the same goal. Naturally, cooperation was the best choice. The Battle Emperor nodded with satisfaction. Originally, with his status, he didn't need to come personally. He only needed to let the Butterfly Sovereign come. This was the case previously. However, the current Yi Shiwen was not the same as before. He had entered the peak of the 9th realm and had the ability to kill the 10 great Emperor Lords. He was already qualified to be on equal footing with the Battle Emperor. The relationship between both parties had changed from a clear primary and secondary relationship to a cooperative relationship on equal footing. Everything was naturally different. Yi Shiwen's progress was amazing. Moreover, his future was promising. The Battle Emperor naturally didn't mind befriending such a powerful existence. As for entering the Heavenly Master Realm, he hadn't thought so much about it. He had been an Emperor Lord since ancient times. He had entered the peak of the Emperor Lord for many years. However, he still hadn't entered the Heavenly Master Realm. No matter how amazing Yi Shiwen's performance was, it would be difficult for him to enter the Heavenly Master Realm in a short period of time. At that time, the Battle Emperor would definitely enter the Heavenly Master Realm first. Moreover, Yi Shiwen, who had also clearly joined the Eastern Heavenly Master Camp, would naturally be closer to him than others. In that case, let's go, said the Battle Emperor. And Yi Shiwen nodded. Since the two of them had already made their decision, their speed was naturally extremely fast. They immediately headed for the Crystal Valley. The Crystal Valley was in an extremely remote place on the path of creation. It wasn't a place where many Emperor Lords were active. If it weren't for the Battle Emperor's guidance, it would have been very difficult for Yi Shiwen to find this Crystal Valley based on his current range of activity. The astonishing foundation of the Fortune God dynasty was vividly displayed at this time. There were many things that you hadn't even touched, but they had already done it thoroughly. A huge basin appeared in front of the two of them. The basin was surrounded by cliffs. These cliffs weren't ordinary mountains. On the contrary, they were actually the unique law crystals of the path of creation that they had seen before. From afar, it looked like a mountain that originally had law crystals. A huge hole had been punched through it, resulting in the formation of this crystal valley. Yi Shiwen looked at the Battle Emperor's expression. It was obvious that the Battle Emperor had the same thoughts. It was just that he had seen it many times and was already used to it. He roughly understood why the Battle Emperor had said that this might be a battlefield. From all aspects, this was indeed a possibility. However, if this was the case, it would be even more astonishing. With his strength, attacking these crystals would at most leave a few scratches on them. However, someone had actually broken these crystals and formed such a huge, deep valley. How astonishing was this person's strength! Perhaps even a heavenly master would find it difficult to achieve such a feat. Since we're already here, let's split up. We'll definitely inform you when we find the whereabouts of the Night Emperor. Chapter 3288. I think Taoist Martial Emperor wants to enter the Crystal Valley as soon as possible to find the law crystals, said the Battle Emperor in an understanding manner. Well, then I'll wait for your news, said Yi Shiwen without any pretense. The two of them quickly separated. Yi Shiwen took a step forward and rushed into the Crystal Valley. Soon, he encountered the situation that the Battle Emperor had described earlier. Time and space were fragmented. If one was not careful, one might be injured by the sharp fragments. Even the supreme Tao body of an Emperor Lord might be seriously injured in the face of such fragments. This huge basin was also divided into independent, dangerous spaces by these fragments. As long as one entered these spaces, it would be difficult to be detected by the outside world. This was why the Battle Emperor wanted to find the whereabouts of Yi Huang, so he had to spend a lot of effort. Yi Shiwen entered one of the spaces. There was nothing in this space. Even the laws had turned into nothingness here. Such a space was extremely barren. The connection of different spaces was equally dangerous. It was extremely difficult for life to survive in such an environment. Even the laws didn't exist, let alone living creatures. Yi Shiwen's divine thoughts shrouded the entire space. He swept up and down, but he didn't find any trace of the law crystals. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Immediately, he stepped on an escape light and directly passed through the space wall. He entered another space. It was different from the space just now. This space seemed to have entered a kingdom of flames. There were all kinds of flames burning everywhere. The law of fire suppressed all other existences here, turning the entire space into a sea of fire. Yi Shiwen searched again, but he didn't find the existence of the law crystals. However, he wasn't discouraged. This was already within his expectations. These spaces were very close to the valley entrance. They should have been searched by other emperors many times. Even if there were law crystals, they would have already been obtained by others. In this way, Yi Shiwen shuttled through one space after another. Most of these spaces had extremely harsh environments. They could only exist in extreme environments. Some even caused some trouble for Yi Shiwen. Soon, Yi Shiwen began to gradually approach the center of the Crystal Valley along with his unceasing shuttling. These places began to become more and more dangerous as he approached the center of the Crystal Valley. If it could be said that there were only some single attribute principles wreaking havoc in the periphery, then some extremely dangerous things had begun to remain in this place. This was because he had begun to approach the center of the entire battlefield, the place where the peerless masters fought. Therefore, Yi Shiwen began to be more and more careful. He was no longer as unscrupulous as before. However, according to the Battle Emperor, the probability of law crystals appearing in such a place was higher. This space was different from the chaotic space outside. The entire space was just like the outside world. It was very normal everywhere. Birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. However, it was the most abnormal place for such a space to appear in such a place. Yi Shiwen had just passed through the space channel when he suddenly entered a space. Martial Emperor, I didn't expect to see you here. Suddenly, a pleasantly surprised voice came from afar. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw a graceful figure standing in the distance. It was none other than a Huang, whom he had met in the past. A Huang didn't seem to be doing anything. She was dressed in a simple and elegant manner, but she had a bit of enchanting aura about her. "Oh, it's Martial Emperor," said Yi Shiwen. His expression did not change, but he had already begun to be vigilant. It was not a good thing to meet a Huang here. Although a Huang and he had known each other for a long time, for him, a Huang was not a good friend, let alone a good person. He knew from Emperor Li that a Huang's origin was mysterious. In the Fortune Divine capital, where there were many masters, she dared to openly organize the Green Sky Association. He did not know what kind of powerful figure was behind such a person. And the most important thing was that he did not know whether she was a friend or a foe. Although she was not necessarily a mortal enemy, it was hard to say anything in this place. What a coincidence. I didn't expect to see Martial Emperor here. I sent someone to look for Martial Emperor previously, but Martial Emperor was in closed-door training at that time, so I couldn't see him. Otherwise, I would definitely invite Martial Emperor to come together. Compared to Yi Shiwen's vigilance, Huang was very friendly. She took a step forward and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. A fragrant wind blew over. Yi Shiwen glanced at her. At first, with Yi Shiwen's cultivation, he only felt that Huang's cultivation was unfathomable. He could not estimate it at all. However, now he could already see that Huang was actually at the peak of the Emperor realm. No wonder she could do whatever she wanted in the Fortune Divine capital. Even Emperor Li, who was powerful and had a position, had to retreat. She was indeed very impressive. Moreover, as a woman, being able to cultivate to this level was a miracle. Not only in the myriad worlds, even in the Fortune Divine dynasty, the number of empresses was very few. Empresses as strong as Huang were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Why? Did Martial Emperor Huang look for me? Yi Shiwen said with a smile on his face. After the initial vigilance, Yi Shiwen also relaxed a little. This was because he wasn't as powerless as he was when he first met Huang. Even if Huang was a peak Emperor Lord, it wasn't a big deal for him. After all, he had even killed Emperor Eaglehorn. But I didn't expect that we could meet here by chance. It's really fate. Huang nodded without hesitation. It was difficult to have a bad impression of her just by looking at her appearance. Yi Shiwen was no exception. It was just that he heard Emperor Li said that she belonged to the Clear Sky Association, so he was a little more vigilant in his heart. Yi Shiwen laughed casually and said, "Why? Martial Emperor Huang, why are you here? Is it possible that there are law crystals here?" There was a faint smile on his face, as if he wanted to see Huang panicking. Unexpectedly, Huang did not have the slightest shyness at all. She said directly, "It's true. In this space, I found a lot of law crystals." Yi Shiwen didn't expect Huang to be so calm. He couldn't help but admire her in his heart. So, he said, "Since there are law crystals here, why didn't you take them? Could it be that you encountered some trouble?" Yi Shiwen was just guessing. He didn't expect that he guessed it right. Huang nodded and said, "I really can't hide anything from Martial Emperor Wu. I did encounter a little trouble here." "What trouble? Can you tell me?" asked Yi Shiwen. "Of course. If Martial Emperor Wu is willing to help, it will be even better. When the time comes, we will split the law crystals equally." "How about it?" Huang said very straightforwardly. She didn't have any shyness at all. She was a little bold and broad-minded. "What kind of trouble is it? Tell me," Yi Shiwen asked casually. However, Huang didn't hide her attitude at all. It made Yi Shiwen a little interested. He couldn't help but ask. "In fact, there's an altar in the depths of this space, and there are many law crystals in the depths of this altar. However, there's a martial intent guarding this altar. I've tried it, but I can't break through it." Huang briefly introduced the situation of this altar. "Even you can't break through the protection of this martial arts intent?" Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be a little curious. If this was the case, this martial arts intent was really something extraordinary. Previously, the Battle Emperor also said that in this place, whether it was martial arts intent or some creatures derived from the bloodline of some experts, they were one of the most dangerous things. Although it was just a martial arts intent, it was extremely dangerous for them. Just like the martial arts intent he left behind now, he could guarantee that he could torture hundreds of quasi-emperors. "Well, that's right." Huang's face showed a bit of a sly expression. "So I specifically released the news among those Emperor-level creatures, attracting some big shots among the Emperor-level creatures to come to the altar." Yi Shiwen's expression suddenly became a little strange when he heard this. He looked at Huang again. He could only say that she really had a cunning mind. However, this could also be considered an open plot. If he heard such news, it was hard to say whether he would have any thoughts of coming to take a look. Moreover, Huang wasn't lying. She just released the news. Conspiracies were not terrible. Any kind of conspiracy was like floating clouds in the face of open strength. However, open plots were difficult to defend against. It was no wonder that Emperor Li was so afraid of Huang. It was probably not just because of the clear sky association behind her. Her own wisdom was also something that people were extremely afraid of. Just a piece of news could attract a large number of top experts among the Emperor-level creatures to explore the way for her. It was better to stay away from such a woman. If you just want to be the Oriole behind and reap the benefits, I think you don't need to tell me the news at all. Wait for those Emperor-level creatures to fight to the death with that martial arts intent, and then come out to clean up the mess. Isn't that enough? The doubts in Yi Shiwen's heart not only didn't decrease, but continued to increase. The more he knew, the more he inevitably suspected that there was something fishy going on. Are you suspecting me? In fact, it's not that complicated. I just received news that there is a very troublesome guy among the Emperor-level creatures. I'm not sure that I can reap the benefits in front of him. Chapter 3289. There was a slight smile on Huang's face. Although there was a flaw in the plan, she did not seem to care about it all. What kind of person can make you feel troubled? Yishuan could not help but be a little curious. Huang's strength was now in Yi Shiwen's eyes. Although she was not as good as him, she was considered a first-class figure among the peak emperors. She was much stronger than Emperor Tian, whom Yi Shiwen had killed previously. She was even stronger than the Void Emperor. Although she was not comparable to the 10 great emperors, she was only lacking in foundation and accumulation. She was considered a first-class expert below the 10 great emperors. With her strength, there weren't many people who could make her feel that it was a thorny problem, or even a fisherman who couldn't take advantage of the situation. Just like when they were fighting for the king-level dragon vein previously, no matter how hard the Void Emperor and the Sky-destroying Corpse King tried, it was absolutely impossible for them to take advantage of him like a fisherman. It was an absolute suppression. Even if the other emperors joined forces, they would not be able to take advantage of him. From Huang's words, it seemed that there was also such a terrifying expert coming. He was naturally very interested. As for the person who made Huang difficult to deal with, he did not care. Even if it was a battle emperor, he had nothing to fear now, let alone killing an emperor-level creature, which was different from killing the Eagle Horn Emperor. For the Fortune God dynasty, killing an emperor-level creature would only be a meritorious deed, not a mistake. When the time came, it would inevitably be a great reward. Because the emperor-level creature of the 9th realm was already considered the top of the emperor-level creatures. In the past, it was very difficult to let one of them die for countless years. Often, they died by themselves when their lifespan was up. Not every emperor-level creature of the 9th realm had the ability of Yi Huang to cut off their own cultivation and recultivate the great way of creation to obtain eternal life. Most of them died without a burial place in the process. Not everyone had the luck to recultivate successfully. Any monarch or monarch could be said to be blessed by the heavens. They had received the favor of the heavens, which was why they had such earth-shattering achievements. However, they didn't cherish it. Severing their own great Tao was the same as digging their own grave. Even their supreme karmic luck would be severed. After that, they would be like ordinary people struggling with great difficulty. Most of them would die during this process. It was precisely because of this that any emperor-level creature that could go against the Great Path and ultimately achieve the Great Path of an Imperial Lord was an earth-shattering existence, let alone such a powerful one. I'm sure fellow Taoist Martial Emperor knows that our Fortune God dynasty has the 10 great emperor monarchs. In the outer domain, there are also the so-called 10 great emperors. The person who came here after receiving the news is one of the 10 great emperors, Blood Empress Linglong. Huang said, Blood Empress Linglong? Yishuan replied. He naturally knew about the prestige of Blood Empress Linglong. He didn't know much about the emperor experts of the foreign domain. However, he knew about the top 10 emperor experts, and Blood Empress Linglong was one of them. It was rumored that her cultivation was unfathomable. She was a creature born from a sea of blood in the foreign domain. After her birth, she had already set off a reign of terror. Although she wasn't the most experienced among the 10 great emperors, no one dared to underestimate her. Yes, it's him. I didn't expect that I would be able to attract him here. A slightly helpless smile appeared on Huang's face. He is already a peak emperor expert. If he wants to advance further, these law crystals are necessary. Naturally, he won't give up so easily. Yi Shiwen said. It wasn't a big deal for ordinary emperor lords or emperor-level experts. They also needed law crystals. However, law crystals weren't the most useful for them. However, it was the key to whether or not they could step into the heavenly master realm for peak emperor lords and emperor-level experts. This was naturally different. Even if it was only a little bit of law crystals, it was still necessary to strive for it. Not to mention, for emperor-level creatures, 10 million years was already the limit of their lifespan. Only by stepping into the heavenly master realm could their lifespan be extended to 100 million years. Their lifespan would suddenly increase by 10 times. Therefore, these law crystals were far more attractive to emperor-level creatures than emperor monarchs. They must seize enough law crystals just to survive. This was because it was a consumable item. As it was continuously consumed, it would disappear, and it wouldn't exist for long. This forced these high and mighty imperial lords to take advantage of the appearance of the cracks, to enter the path of creation again and again, all for the sake of obtaining law crystals. For immortality, however, he was personally attracted here. I'm afraid that there aren't just a little bit of law crystals here. Yi Shiwen said, That's true. I wouldn't have to put in so much effort if there were only a little bit of law crystals. From what I've observed, I'm afraid that there are a lot of law crystals here. Huang said, precisely because of this, I'm not sure that I can reap the benefits from Blood Empress Linglong. However, although I can't deal with Blood Empress Linglong, Taoist Martial Emperor, you should be able to, Huang said with a smile. I heard that Eagle Horn Emperor couldn't escape death in your hands. Originally, I planned to call other experts of my Blue Sky Association. However, since Taoist Martial Emperor is here, it's the best. She looked at Yi Shiwen from time to time as she spoke. She seemed to be in disbelief. The last time she looked for Yi Shiwen had just entered the 7th realm. In her opinion, he was nothing special. Although the 7th realm had already entered the top ranks of emperor monarchs, there was still a relatively large gap between him and the real top figures like them. He was already in the range of being roped in. However, Brylon didn't suffer any loss. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen had caused a lot of trouble. It could be said that the movement was huge, and the enemies were also very powerful. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen wasn't annihilated in this continuous attack. On the contrary, he was still improving at an amazing speed. Previously, when she heard that Yi Shiwen had beheaded Eagle Horn Emperor, she couldn't believe it. Eagle Horn Emperor was a terrifying existence. She was already a high-ranking member of the Blue Sky Association, but in front of Eagle Horn Emperor, she was still a junior. In this era where heavenly masters basically didn't appear, Eagle Horn Emperor was a big boss himself. There was a huge force behind him. His strength was also first class in the Fortune God dynasty. She knew that with her strength, although she was tyrannical, in fact, it would be difficult to pose any threat to Eagle Horn Emperor even if there were 2 or 3 more of them. He was a powerful existence who had almost entered the heavenly master realm. He was above all the emperor monarchs. He was not an ignorant person who didn't know how powerful the top 10 emperor monarchs were. However, because of this, she was even more shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. The more she knew, the more terrifying she felt. Otherwise, she wouldn't have rashly asked Yi Shiwen to join them. Yi Shiwen smiled. He had been wondering why Huang hadn't looked for the experts of the Clear Sky Association. Blood Empress Linglong was indeed terrifying. However, he didn't believe that the Clear Sky Association wouldn't have any way to deal with this. However, he quickly figured out that there was still a conflict of interest involved. If it was him, he could still share it with Huang. However, if the Blue Sky Association took action, it was really hard to say how much Huang would fall behind in the end. For Yi Shiwen, this was also an opportunity. Previously, he searched many spaces but didn't find the existence of a law crystal. Now, there was finally a trace of the law crystal. You released the news. Have they come? Yi Shiwen asked. They haven't arrived yet, but they will be here soon. Why? A Huang looked at Yi Shiwen and couldn't help but ask. Yi Shiwen paused and said, since they haven't arrived yet, then I will go and see what kind of martial arts will this is. It can even stop you. A martial arts will could stop a master of the ninth realm. This in itself was extraordinary. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and his divine thoughts directly forced into the depths of this space. He saw that in the deepest part of this space, in the deepest part of the layers of broken spaces, there was a huge altar. The entire altar was surrounded by the earth, fire, water, and wind elements that were rotating irregularly. Around this altar, a disorderly law zone was formed. Below this altar, law crystals of various sizes could be seen everywhere. They were floating in the void, as if they were supporting the entire altar. Above the altar, a terrifying will shrouded the entire altar, as though it was protecting it. Just a single will alone possessed an unimaginable amount of power. Yi Shiwen's divine thoughts had just approached, and they were shattered by this thought. He was also a little stunned. It was important to know that it was very difficult to destroy his divine sense, even in the most hostile environment. However, it had been completely destroyed when he had just gotten close to it. At this moment, he finally understood why a Huang said that even she couldn't do anything about it. She had no choice but to come up with a plan to lure the others to take the lead. When the time came, she would be the fisherman who reaped the benefits. It was indeed troublesome. How is it? Do you feel its power? A Huang said with a faint smile. She caught a glimpse of the stunned expression on Yi Shiwen's face. Obviously, he had encountered the same thing as her just now. She couldn't help but tease him. It's really troublesome. I don't know which Supreme left this trouble behind, Yi Shiwen said. However, he was not annoyed. If not for this, he probably wouldn't have the chance to intervene. While the two of them were talking, a few figures flew in. Chapter 3290. It's indeed troublesome, but it's not too tricky. It's a pity. If you had met me earlier, you wouldn't have needed to release the news to attract those Emperor-level life forms. I could have solved the problem by myself. Yi Shiwen paused for a moment and said. A Huang looked at Yi Shiwen with a slightly stunned look. She obviously didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be so confident. She was also a little surprised. Was the gap between them really that big? At least, if it were her, she would never have such confidence. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's not bad to sit back and reap the benefits. Yi Shiwen grinned and didn't take this matter to heart. His eyes were deep. He had already seen those figures flying in. Among them, there was no lack of terrifying beasts that were extremely huge. They had just concealed their figures when they entered the space. There really are law crystals here. Fortunately, we came as soon as we got the news. If others had gotten the first opportunity, we wouldn't have gotten the chance. These Emperor-level life forms were obviously in an alliance. They entered and left together. That was why they appeared here together. Ha ha! The heavens are really helping me. Although I don't know where the news came from, it's generally correct. We have searched many spaces during this time, but we still haven't found the whereabouts of the law crystals. It's really too difficult to find. For the Emperor Lords, law crystals were still a scarce resource. It was not something that ordinary Emperor Lords had the opportunity to get their hands on. However, every Emperor Lord had the ambition to enter the Heavenly Master Realm. Therefore, as long as there was a little chance, they would not let it go. Moreover, there were so many law crystals. It would be a huge number if everyone divided it equally. Ha ha ha, let's divide it equally, shouted an Emperor-level life form. This was also the plan that everyone agreed to because they couldn't possibly have a better distribution plan. The figures of these Emperor-level life forms kept approaching the altar. However, while they were still discussing how to distribute the law crystals, the martial will that covered the altar finally moved. It turned into a long spear and moved directly. Puff! One of the powerful Emperor-level life forms was instantly pierced. He didn't even have the slightest reaction before he was pierced. His spirit was also blown up on the spot by this spear. Without the control of his primordial spirit, his body fell from the sky. Not good. At this time, these Emperor-class life forms finally realized that there might be a problem. Most of them had been focused on the law crystal, so they hadn't noticed that there might be a problem with this altar. However, by the time he realized it, it was already too late. An Emperor-class creature had been instantly killed without any resistance. These Emperor-class life forms instinctively felt that something was wrong. However, the spear didn't stop as it pierced through an Emperor-class life form's heart. Retreat. At this time, these Emperor-class life forms also realized that there was something strange about this spear. How could they dare to stay here any longer? They retreated again and again, finally retreating out of the range of the altar. During this process, another Emperor-class life form was beheaded. From the time they realized that something was wrong to the time they retreated, only a short period of time had passed. However, in such a short period of time, 3 Emperor-level life forms had actually fallen. More than half of this alliance had disappeared in an instant. Although the members of this alliance were not very powerful, and the powerhouses were only at the 4th realm, and most of them were ordinary Emperor-level creatures like the 2nd or 3rd realm, it was evident how terrifying this spear was to be able to kill Emperor-level creatures in an instant. These Emperor-level life forms were still in a state of shock. For the first time, they felt that death was so close to them. How is this possible? What the hell is that? Said an Emperor-level life form. They still couldn't believe that something could threaten their lives so easily. It's a martial will. Hiss. How can it be so terrifying? Said an Emperor-level life form as he sucked in a breath of cold air. He had already recognized that this spear didn't have a physical body at all. It was all martial will. However, it was also because of this that it seemed even more terrifying. The physical bodies of sovereign lords were all extremely perfect Tao physiques. Yet, this martial will was able to penetrate through them and wipe out their primordial spirits just by relying on its will alone. If it had a physical body, how terrifying would it be? The complexions of these Emperor-level life forms were extremely ugly. They had thought that they could get their hands on the law crystal. They had been complacent just a moment ago. However, reality immediately slapped them hard in the face, making them understand that they were nothing at all. One spear killed an Emperor-level life form in an instant. This martial will is really tyrannical. No wonder even you can't do anything about it. Yi Shiwen said from afar. He was a little curious as he watched this scene. He didn't expect this martial will to be extraordinarily powerful, even though it hadn't gone beyond his control. Otherwise, with my strength, I wouldn't need to look for external help at all, said a Huang with a smile. She naturally had this bit of confidence. Now, she was forced to look for external help. Even if she succeeded, she would need to share it equally with Yi Shiwen. She had naturally weighed the pros and cons. This is a little interesting. Let's see what happens next. These Emperor-level life forms suffered heavy casualties. However, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. He didn't seem to be moved at all. And this was only the first batch. Dozens of Emperor-level life forms appeared one after another. Most of them were not very powerful. They were only at the 3rd or 4th realm. Even if there were 7th or 8th realm Emperor-level life forms, they were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. In the face of this spear, they were still no match for it. Fortunately, they had some power to protect themselves. At most, they would be seriously injured. They wouldn't be instantly killed like the 3rd or 4th realm sovereign emperors. The Emperor-class life forms that had already suffered a loss didn't give any warning to the latecomers. They just watched them throw away their lives. Therefore, from time to time, some reckless Emperor-class life forms would completely lose their composure when they saw the law crystal. They would rush forward, only to be instantly killed by a spear that appeared out of nowhere. Although they were all foreign life forms, in fact, they were never a single race. The so-called foreign life forms were just a general term. In fact, before the Fortune God dynasty appeared, these races that ruled this boundless land were originally rivals. They also had a deep blood feud with each other. It was unknown how many of their clansmen died in the hands of each other. Even now, the overt and covert struggles between the foreign races had never stopped. Compared to the Fortune God dynasty, there was no trace of order in the foreign races. The killings never stopped. Not even the slightest bit of kinship existed. Although the overt and covert struggles were still very fierce in the Fortune God dynasty, they were never so brazen. There are always some rules that everyone must abide by. Yi Shiwen couldn't help laughing as he watched these foreign emperor-level existences scamming each other and forcing other emperor-level existences to jump in. Then again, it made sense. These people had never been on the same side. The so-called foreign emperor-level existences were merely a forced division by the Fortune God dynasty. Finally, after nearly 20 emperor-level life forms of varying strengths had fallen under the spear, no more emperor-level life forms rushed over. Almost all the nearby emperor-level life forms who had received the news had also arrived. The remaining ones either didn't receive the news or couldn't come. The others finally learned their lesson and no longer tried to approach the altar lest they get pierced by the spear. However, dozens of emperor-level life forms, big and small, were all gathered here, staring at each other. In the end, it wasn't a solution. Just as an 8th realm emperor-level life form tried to come forward and form an alliance to deal with the martial will of the spear, suddenly, a figure with a monstrous aura appeared in this space. Everyone's heart couldn't help but tremble when they saw it. Yi Shiwen and a Huang, who were in the distance, also understood that the main character had arrived. It was Blood Empress Ling Long. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but look at a Huang. In the end, Blood Empress Ling Long still came. However, what surprised him even more was that a Huang was able to know in advance that Blood Empress Ling Long would come. The power of the Clear Sky Association was beyond his expectations. It was probably much larger than what he had initially thought. This figure arrived with a monstrous sea of blood. It almost seemed as if this space would be turned into a sea of blood. And on top of the endless waves of the sea of blood, a person stood alone. It seemed as if this person could suppress the entire space. Blood Empress Ling Long. Yi Shiwen and a Huang weren't the only ones who recognized the person in front of them. Among these emperor-level life forms, there were also more than one or two who recognized the person in front of them. Even so, they could only swallow their anger. After all, they couldn't do anything to Blood Empress Ling Long, who was one of the 10 great emperors. They were too weak compared to her. He alone felt as though he was about to suppress everyone's power. Yi Shiwen didn't know when he had opened his double pupils. He saw a blood-red figure standing on top of the endless waves. It was a blood-red figure. His face couldn't be seen clearly. It seemed as if he was formed by boundless blood. He wore a gorgeous blood-red robe. He looked like the world's supreme expert. A bunch of trash. You can't even deal with a martial will. How shameful. Blood Empress Ling Long reprimanded them as soon as she arrived. She didn't seem to be reprimanding her peers. Instead, she seemed to be reprimanding a group of juniors who hadn't reached the Tao. Chapter 3291. Blood Empress Ling Long didn't care about them at all. She treated the other emperor creatures as her juniors. The other emperor creatures didn't dare to say anything, even though they were angry. They were already standing at the pinnacle of the outer realms, each of them ruling over their own clans and powers. No one dared to reprimand them, let alone reprimanding them as if they were their grandsons. However, this person was Blood Empress Ling Long. How could they not know how powerful she was? Some of the emperor creatures had even grown up hearing about her legend and fame. If they were weaker than her, how could they dare to be presumptuous in front of her? In the world of the alien domain, this was a very normal thing, unlike the Fortune God dynasty, where there was at least the most basic order. In the alien domain, there was no order at all. The winner takes all. This was the sum of all the rules. Senior Blood Empress Ling Long. There's something strange on the altar. There's a strange martial will. We tried to go forward, but we were all stopped. Finally, someone spoke. At this time, it was useless even if they were unhappy. They couldn't expect Blood Empress Ling Long to give in to them. This was absolutely impossible. Given Blood Empress Ling Long's character, it was already good enough that she didn't kill them. You're all just trash. I want 70% of the law crystals here. Blood Empress Ling Long snorted disdainfully, as if she didn't care about the others at all. However, she didn't propose to monopolize the law crystals. After all, there were many Emperor creatures present. If she offended them all at the same time, it would be quite troublesome. Although the other Emperor creatures were unwilling, they had no other choice. Although they could only get 30% of the law crystals, it was still better than nothing. If Blood Empress Ling Long didn't make a move, they wouldn't have a chance to touch the remaining law crystals. Okay, as long as we can get those law crystals, 70% is fine. An Emperor creature said immediately. Blood Empress Ling Long nodded with satisfaction. Then, she took a step forward and directly rushed towards the altar. Swish! Almost at the same time, the spear that was formed by the martial will appeared in the air and shot toward Blood Empress Ling Long at lightning speed. Compared to the others, Blood Empress Ling Long's amazing skills were finally displayed. Ordinary Emperor-level creatures couldn't resist the sudden attack of the long spear, but Blood Empress Ling Long didn't have the time to react. A blood-red wall appeared in front of her, which seemed to be able to block everything. Bang! The spear penetrated Blood Empress Ling Long's blood wall. In an instant, it had penetrated more than half of the wall. It was only a hair's breadth away from Blood Empress Ling Long's eyebrows. All of this happened in a split second. The power of the long spear was so amazing that even Blood Empress Ling Long's defense was useless in front of it. However, this momentary pause gave Blood Empress Ling Long a chance to react. Immediately after, Blood Empress Ling Long's figure instantly disappeared in the sea of blood that filled the sky. The spear passed through the afterimage of her body, but it was unable to nail her to the bead. When Blood Empress Ling Long's figure reappeared, she was only a few dozen meters away from the altar. Previously, she had only made a feint to distract the long spear. It was obvious that Blood Empress Ling Long had been here for some time, but she wasn't in a hurry to come out. Instead, she had figured out a pattern from the Emperor-level creatures that had been sent to their deaths. Hence, she was able to come into contact with the altar in a short period of time. However, right at this moment, the heavens and earth changed color as a gigantic hand appeared in the sky and attacked Blood Empress Ling Long fiercely. The gigantic hand grabbed her. Blood Empress Ling Long retreated and turned pale with fright. The huge hand seemed to have grabbed the river of fate and pulled her out of it. In an instant, a terrifying existence appeared. Blood Empress Ling Long retreated and avoided most of the attacks. However, it was too late and her chest was directly grabbed. Bang! Blood Empress Ling Long was directly hit and she retreated. A bloody hole appeared in her chest and blood was flowing out. This portion of flesh and blood that was snatched away didn't go to waste either. It was as if under the effects of a wave of natural laws, a part of a human figure was forcibly formed. It was a supreme existence dressed in a supreme being's robe, his hands behind his back. His eyes contained an invincible might that looked down on the world. A supreme existence is reviving with the help of flesh and blood. A sovereign emperor gasped. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but take a step back. He was intimidated by this aura. After the flesh and blood wriggled for a while, it turned into a willful figure. Damn it! Which existence is reviving? Blood Empress Ling Long's expression became even more unsightly. She could feel that a terrifying will was reviving with the help of his flesh and blood. Not only did his flesh and blood contain endless energy, but it also contained a part of his primordial spirit. It was simply terrifying that it was being refined silently. This was only the revival of a part of his martial arts will. If his main body appeared, the consequences would be unimaginable. How terrifying would he be? After this terrifying existence took form, it just guarded the altar and faced Blood Empress Ling Long from afar. There's something strange about this altar. There must be something strange about it. Blood Empress Ling Long made a judgment almost immediately. It wasn't that she hadn't seen remnant martial arts wills before. Some of them were indeed very dangerous. However, this martial arts will was completely different. It was obviously guarding the altar. For an altar to be guarded by such an extremely powerful martial will, it was clear that it was extraordinary. However, she didn't know what was in this altar. I must get my hands on it. Blood Empress Ling Long immediately came to a conclusion. A blood-red armor had appeared on his body. At the same time, a blood-red spear had also appeared in his hand. Those who were familiar with him knew that he was about to go all out. Obviously, he also wanted to know what kind of existence was in this altar that could be guarded by the martial arts will. It can even turn into a physical body. This is not simple. Yi Shiwen said from afar. Everything that had happened just now fell into his eyes. In his heart, he had the same guess as Blood Empress Ling Long. At this moment, he couldn't wait to rush out and snatch the altar. However, he knew that now wasn't the time for that. He would have to wait until Blood Empress Ling Long and the marshal will fought to the death. Although he wasn't afraid, it would save him a lot of trouble if he made his move later. Yes, I didn't expect that either. A Huang said with a solemn expression. When she had tried to test the waters just now, the spear had already put her in a very difficult situation. She had tried her best to deal with it, but she didn't see the martial arts will that had turned into a corpse. Obviously, it wasn't qualified for the martial arts will to appear. Although she was very depressed to come to this conclusion, she wasn't very disappointed. She was also very clear that there were many good things in it. However, at this moment, she also knew that if Yi Shiwen was here, it would be impossible for her to obtain the altar. However, it was enough for her to obtain the law crystals below. At this moment, the battle was about to start. The one who initiated the battle was not anyone else, but Blood Empress Ling Long. The spear in her hand moved, dragging out thousands of miles of blood qi. It was like a huge mountain range that traversed the universe. In an instant, the spear pierced through everything. At this moment, the martial arts will also attacked. The spear that was formed by the martial arts will also appeared in his hand. He directly faced the spear head-on without any fear. Using the martial arts will to fight against a Dao tool was even crazier than using the physical body to fight against a Dao tool. At least the physical body still had a physical body, but the martial arts will didn't even have a physical body. Boom! An incomparably loud explosion sound was heard as the two sides collided. In an instant, it turned into a terrifying explosive frenzy that swept in all directions. It turned into a terrifying frenzy of destruction that destroyed everything in its path. It was really terrifying. Blood Empress Ling Long's strength was obviously superior to those Emperor-level creatures. However, the power that the martial arts will displayed was actually not inferior to Blood Empress Ling Long's. It was no wonder that she could stop everyone from getting close to her. Bang! 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 Deafening rumbles rang out as the battle between the two sides unfolded in the blink of an eye. These Emperor-level existences discovered that they seemed to have lost sight of the figures of the two sides in the battle. They couldn't see anything at all and could only watch as the two sides tore the space into countless pieces. So powerful. Huang revealed a slightly shocked expression. Although she knew that the 10 great emperors and the 10 great emperors should be very strong, it was a completely different matter when she saw it with her own eyes. She was also extremely shocked. Apart from Huang, the other emperor-level creatures also revealed the same shocked expression. Only Yi Shiwen remained unmoved. He just crossed his arms and coldly watched the battle in front of him. Although such a battle was extremely intense, it was impossible to say that he was helpless. However, his eyes were fixed on the huge altar. It seemed as if he wanted to know what was inside the altar. What could make the martial arts will care so much about it? Chapter 3292. It was obvious that this martial will had an extraordinary origin. That was why it was able to burst out such an amazing combat power. However, it was just a martial will. It was difficult for it to have real intelligence. It was not like the primordial spirit. Even a trace of the primordial spirit could have enough intelligence. Under such circumstances, no matter how strong the martial will was, it would be exhausted sooner or later. After all, it didn't have a physical body, so it couldn't be exhausted indefinitely. It was not difficult to kill ordinary sovereign lords. However, it would be a big mistake to compete with Blood Empress Ling Long in a battle of attrition. Finishing the battle quickly was the way to go. However, it was impossible for the martial will to end the battle quickly. It would drag on for a long time. Blood Empress Ling Long should be able to understand this point. Sure enough, although Blood Empress Ling Long was fighting with the martial will, she was more on the defensive than on the offensive. She was obviously trying to stall for time, so that the martial will would be exhausted. Yi Shiwen was able to do this with his strength. It was also the best decision. At the same time, Yi Shiwen was very surprised. Blood Empress Ling Long had rich combat experience. She could easily judge the situation. In the dark, his martial arts had already been raised to the extreme. If that martial will was unable to allow him to achieve his initial goal of causing both sides to suffer heavy injuries, then he would have to make a move. He had absolute confidence in himself. Even without the help of his martial will, he still had enough power to suppress everything. Compared to Yi Shiwen's confidence, Along was more worried. The more powerful Blood Empress Ling Long was, the more worried she was. After all, she had never seen Yi Shiwen in action. After all, rumors were just rumors. She hadn't seen it with her own eyes. No matter how powerful Yi Shiwen was, in her opinion, there was no difference between him and Blood Empress Ling Long. He was already at the peak of the Sovereign Lord realm. He was a supreme existence above all other Sovereign Lords. The battle became more and more intense. At this time, the other Emperor-level creatures could also see that if Blood Empress Ling Long's guess was right, she was probably trying to exhaust this martial will. Everyone couldn't help but admire her. This was indeed the best way. Although it was a little cowardly, it was the best way to deal with it. And at this moment, that martial will let out a loud roar. Instantly, the wind and clouds in the world surged. In an instant, all sorts of terrifying gales were stirred up, turning into a terrifying tornado. Under this tornado, the spiritual chi in the world was turned into pieces of crystals, floating in the air and stirring up a shocking tempest. Originally, the Emperor-level creatures were a little disdainful. However, when an Emperor-level creature was scratched by this crystal, a large piece of his flesh was scraped off on the spot. Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly retreated to avoid this huge crystal storm, lest they were struck by it. The scene of that monarch being casually shaved off a lot of flesh and blood caused them to be incomparably terrified. If they were ruthlessly shaved off by it, all their flesh and blood would be shaved off. In the midst of this crystal storm, Blood Empress Ling Long didn't want to be outdone. She created a sea of blood that covered the sky, turning the world into a sea of blood and a pool of blood. She fought against the crystal storm. At the same time, he was like a speedboat, darting to and fro amidst the tempest and raging tides. His figure continued to flash incessantly, and after countless flashes, he appeared before this martial will. The long spear in his hand stabbed out fiercely, bringing along endless blood-colored energy and piercing through this martial will. This martial will seemed extremely powerful. The spear didn't explode on the spot, but it still pierced through his body. If it were an actual living creature, even if it were a sovereign lord or a royal-level creature, they would either die or be seriously injured after taking this attack head-on. However, this martial will did not show any signs of this. It merely tapped out with the same spear attack at lightning speed. Everything was so well coordinated. It was as if both sides had coordinated well. The spear pierced through Blood Empress Ling Long. Blood Empress Ling Long was struck on the spot, and her entire body exploded. She wasn't like this martial will. She didn't have a physical body, nor did she have true intelligence. She was just a will, and she didn't have any thoughts of fear. When Blood Empress Ling Long's body reassembled in the distance, her expression was extremely ugly. In front of her, the martial will couldn't move at all. The wound on her body was burning fiercely. This flame had almost burned her body and the martial will together. On the other side, there was also a big hole on Blood Empress Ling Long's body. Although the martial will didn't kill her, it was still a fact that she was seriously injured. Damn it, I've been seriously injured." Blood Empress Ling Long couldn't help but curse in her heart. Not only was she seriously injured, but even the exquisite blood armor she was wearing had a huge hole in it. Her physical body could recover easily, but it was almost impossible for her to restore the exquisite blood armor to its previous level. Fortunately, this martial will was finally destroyed under his efforts. Without this martial will causing trouble, he would be able to snatch the altar. At that time, he would be able to find out all the secrets of the altar. As for the law crystal, it seemed to be a secondary problem now. Seeing that Blood Empress Ling Long had killed the martial will, many Emperor-level creatures couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. So many of them had been killed by the martial will. It was like a nightmare. Although Blood Empress Ling Long was going to take most of the treasures, the remaining 30% was enough to satisfy them. As for the altar, they could see that there must be some secret behind it. However, this secret was not something that they could get their hands on. This altar is finally mine. I want to see what secrets are hidden in this altar. Blood Empress Ling Long's injuries had recovered a little, and she directly attacked the altar. She didn't care about the other Emperor-level creatures at all. They wouldn't dare to attack her, even if they had 10 times the courage. Moreover, with her strength, she could still kill all of them even if she was seriously injured. However, just when her big hand was about to touch the altar, a shocking sword light appeared in the void. In an instant, it turned into the 9 heavens Milky Way and directly smashed the big hand. Boom! The whole big hand was smashed on the spot. Who is it? Blood Empress Ling Long was instantly furious. She thought that no one would dare to cause trouble behind her back, but the reality was that someone immediately gave her a hard slap, which made her feel as if she had been slapped in the face. However, this person had no intention of answering her. She directly formed a huge seal, which turned into a primordial sacred mountain and fell on her. Damn it! Blood Empress Ling Long was really infuriated. She was so angry that she pointed her spear backward, which brought about thousands of miles of blood chi, which filled the entire space. The spear traversed everything and directly pointed at the huge seal that looked like a primordial sacred mountain. Bang! The two sides collided fiercely, and a terrifying power raged, which turned into a storm of laws that spread in all directions. Blood Empress Ling Long had expected this to happen, until she felt a terrifying power spread through her spear to her body. Her arm couldn't withstand it and exploded on the spot. Roar! Blood Empress Ling Long was in pain, and she kept retreating to avoid the crushing power that came next. Her eyes were shining with horror. The power that she had used when she was angry was already extremely terrifying, but she was still no match for her opponent. Her opponent's attack had actually caused her arm to explode. Although her arm recovered immediately, the power of this attack was deeply engraved in her mind. Who is it? Why is he hiding and refusing to show himself? Blood Empress Ling Long looked around and instantly spread out her divine will. At the same time, she was extremely vigilant, and her whole body was tense like a hedgehog, which could explode at any time. The other Emperor-level creatures were dumbfounded, and they finally came to their senses. They had all witnessed Blood Empress Ling Long's strength, and she was indeed far stronger than them. Even if all of them joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to stop her. This was also the reason why they didn't object to Blood Empress Ling Long taking away 70% of the law crystals. In this world where strength was respected, strength was the truth. However, the attack of this person in front of them could easily injure Blood Empress Ling Long. Wasn't this terrifying enough? The person who wants her life. Immediately after, another terrifying sword light swept across the sky and came crashing down. Along with the arrival of this sword light, a figure had already appeared in front of everyone. It was a human in a green robe, and he had a delicate face. However, under the contrast of the sword light, the determination on his face was especially obvious. The sword light in his hand split into a 1,000,000 miles long sword light and directly rushed towards Blood Empress Ling Long. It's an emperor. the emperor of the Fortune God dynasty. Blood Empress Ling Long was shocked and furious at the same time. She finally saw who the intruder was. However, it wasn't a daring emperor-level life form, but an emperor of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. The Fortune God Dynasty and the Outer Domain were the two most basic factions in the entire Fortune world. Both sides were born enemies. Blood Empress Ling Long's killing intent instantly exploded. However, the sword light instantly appeared in front of her. It was fast and ruthless. Chapter 3293. The sword was as fast as lightning and created a graceful slash. The graceful slash transformed into a raging wave of sword chi that slashed down on Blood Empress Ling Long. The speed of this sword was too fast. It directly slashed from the horizon and landed in front of him. Clang! A loud explosion sounded, and the sword light fell on Blood Empress Ling Long's body. It seemed as if it had slashed into a sea of blood, and it set off a monstrous wave of blood. The sword light seemed as if it was going to split everything in half, and it directly hit the blood armor on his body. An amazing combat power erupted, and it seemed as if it could break through everything. Blood Empress Ling Long roared, and she let the sword fall on her body. At the same time, she immediately launched a counterattack. However, the terrifying power of the sword had caused her to pause for a moment, and most of the martial power that she had accumulated was scattered. The power of the blood tide that she had launched had also been greatly reduced. Oh no! Blood Empress Ling Long realized that something was wrong the moment she launched her attack. She gathered her martial power the moment she was attacked, and she wanted to rely on the defensive power of the blood armor to forcefully resist the attack before launching a counterattack. As one of the 10 great emperors, how could she be an ordinary person? It could be said that she stood at the peak of many sovereign emperors, and she had rich combat experience. Naturally, she was above all the sovereign emperors. The moment she launched her attack, she felt that most of the martial power that she had gathered had been scattered, and the power was incomparable to before. And this was with the protection of the blood armor. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured in an instant. He finally understood how powerful Yi Shiwen's sword strike was. Sure enough, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change in the slightest when facing this attack. He waved his hand and blasted out a punch. Blood Empress Ling Long's attack was instantly blown away. Not even a speck of it could land on his body. However, Blood Empress Ling Long also took advantage of this opportunity to retreat for hundreds of miles and avoided Yi Shiwen's attack. She finally had some time to breathe. At this moment, she finally saw the person who had attacked her. The series of attacks, just now, had left her no time to breathe at all. He could easily tell that it was a human emperor. However, in his impression, there were no powerful emperors in the human race. Apart from the figure that he had caught a glimpse of, there was no one else worthy of his attention. However, that person was completely different from the person in front of him. They were both incomparably sharp, yet completely different. For a single clan to produce such a figure, it would require an enormous amount of karmic luck, let alone 2 in succession. It was simply inconceivable. Human, there's no enmity between us, so why do you have to force me? Blood Empress Ling Long said. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. How could the fearless Blood Empress Ling Long say something like this, which implied that she was admitting defeat? This completely subverted their worldview, and they couldn't believe it at all. Normally, Blood Empress Ling Long would have already charged forward and killed him. However, she only scolded him angrily and didn't do anything. Naturally, everyone could see that Blood Empress Ling Long had some misgivings. At the same time, they looked at Yi Shiwen. Who was this human emperor? How could he be so powerful? Compared to the Fortune Divine Dynasty's emperor, they knew much less than the Fortune Divine Dynasty's emperor. The Fortune God Dynasty was too big, and the time it took for news to travel was calculated in thousands of years. Although they were powerful emperor-rank existences, in this aspect, they weren't any better. After all, their main focus was on cultivation, and they rarely took the initiative to pay attention to this kind of news. Among these emperor-level existences, only a few people knew Yi Shiwen. Even if they received the news, it was from a long time ago. For ordinary emperors, this level of news was still considered fresh. However, for Yi Shiwen's speed of progress, it was too slow. In the eyes of some people, Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to change 3 times in a day, and it couldn't be compared in normal circumstances. In addition, the news of Yi Shiwen killing the Eagle Horn Emperor was too recent, and it hadn't reached the ears of these emperor-level existences who had been in the Crystal Valley. This human emperor shouldn't be so powerful. An emperor-level existence who knew Yi Shiwen said, but he couldn't believe it. It didn't seem to match with the information he had received. Enmity, a sneer flashed across Yi Shiwen's mouth. Blood Empress Ling Long understood that it was a kind of mockery. If she were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, she wouldn't let Yi Shiwen off at this time. Everything was clear with just one sentence. Both sides didn't need any reason or excuse to kill each other. If she were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, she would definitely not let him off if she had the upper hand. However, she was in a disadvantageous position now, and she hadn't recovered from the serious injury she had suffered just now. Otherwise, with her temper, how could she be so humble? If she could fight, she wouldn't make a fuss. That was her style. You want to be the fisherman who benefits from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam? I don't think you have the strength to do so. Blood Empress Ling Long threatened coldly. With her status and pride, she naturally couldn't say that she wanted to perish together with Yi Shiwen. However, the meaning behind her words was very clear. Do you really think that you and I will perish together? Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. It was impossible even when you were at your peak. Let alone now. Yi Shiwen, so-called the fisherman who benefits from the fight between the two sides, plan had succeeded. Now it was time of harvest. Along's previous worries weren't wrong. Even if Blood Empress Ling Long was seriously injured, she still couldn't deal with her. However, this wasn't a problem for Yi Shiwen. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen moved directly. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged, and the world faintly trembled violently. All kinds of divine lights swept out like heavenly pillars, turning the world and the space into pieces of sparkling and translucent crystals. It seemed as if everything would be destroyed. When he really attacked, his strength was stronger than when he fought against Emperor Eaglehorn. Without thinking, he directly punched out the Six Paths Reincarnation Fist, which turned into the Six Paths Reincarnation Fist and blasted towards Blood Empress Ling Long. Damn it. Blood Empress Ling Long saw that Yi Shiwen didn't intend to give up. So, she quickly roared, and the bloody light on her body shone brightly. It made it seem as if she was the only ruler of this world. She held the spear with both of her hands and blasted it towards Yi Shiwen's Six Paths of Reincarnation Fist. Boom! A loud sound was heard, and both sides directly collided. A terrifying frenzy enveloped both sides and engulfed everything. In such a violent frenzy, Yi Shiwen didn't move an inch. No matter how his clothes fluttered, the brilliance of his body didn't diminish. Instead, it shone even brighter. Blood Empress Ling Long, who was opposite him, felt the sudden attack of a terrifying power. She kept retreating, and her bloody principles were blown away and scattered. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly and chased after her again. He knew that powerful existences like the 10 Great Emperors and 10 Great Emperors were already superior to all the other emperors. Killing them would be of great benefit to Yi Shiwen's Great Way. They were the whetstones of his Great Way, and the others weren't even qualified to be his whetstones. It would make his Great Way purer, and his chances of breaking through to the Heavenly Master Realm would be higher. However, it was like a disaster for Blood Empress Ling Long. Yi Shiwen's berserk attack was like a precious dragon. It had bombarded her body and had even affected her injuries. Her previous injuries couldn't be suppressed anymore, and they were affected by Yi Shiwen's attack. In addition to the injuries caused by Yi Shiwen, it was simply adding injuries on top of injuries. At this moment, she suddenly understood that she shouldn't be a match for Yi Shiwen. Although she was unwilling, she also knew how to judge the situation. No wonder she dared to come up and take advantage of the situation. Ordinary Ninth Realm experts who dared to take advantage of her would be courting death. She was even confident that she could defeat the 10 great emperors, who were also at the peak of the ninth realm. However, Yixuan had obviously surpassed the 10 great emperors and was even more powerful than her at her peak. When did such an invincible figure appear in the Fortune God dynasty? At this moment, she didn't have many thoughts of killing Yixuan. Although it was painful to lose so many law crystals, it was better than being killed by Yixuan. Thinking of this, she fought and retreated at the same time. However, she was also not a simple character. Naturally, she knew that she would be chased by Yixuan if she kept running away. At that time, she would have to die even if she didn't want to. If she wanted to escape from Yixuan's hands, she had to first defeat him and make him hesitate. Therefore, even though Blood Empress Ling Long had the intention to escape, she became even more ruthless in this fight. Suddenly, the sky and the earth shook. Rays of light erupted and dyed the entire world in a blood-red color. Her body had thoroughly integrated with the heavenly way, and she had erupted with an even more tyrannical power. Suddenly, she was evenly matched with Yixuan. Even Yixuan was a little surprised. Blood Empress Ling Long was indeed very powerful. Although she was fighting with her life on the line, he could still see that she wasn't an ordinary person. She wanted to escape, but she turned around and fought even more fiercely. Just this bit of fighting wisdom alone was far superior to many emperors. If Yixuan was an ordinary person, even the 10 great emperors or the 10 great emperors might be defeated by him. If the fight continued like this, it was very likely that both sides would suffer great losses. Blood Empress Ling Long had to die, but he had to pay a sufficient price. However, he wasn't an ordinary person. He regarded Blood Empress Ling Long as a whetstone to hone his skills. How could he let her go so easily? In any case, the altar and the law crystals were already in his bag. He could take them whenever he wanted. Chapter 3294. Blood Empress Ling Long's desperation was exactly what Yixuan wanted. Other people were afraid that both sides would suffer, and others would take advantage of the situation. However, Yixuan wasn't afraid. The more intense Blood Empress Ling Long's resistance was, the more benefits he would obtain. Therefore, Yixuan didn't retreat when facing Blood Empress Ling Long's desperation. Instead, he fought back even more violently. Ever since Yixuan had stepped into the ninth realm, he hadn't stopped thinking about making progress. Instead, under the pressure of reality, his desire to step into the heavenly master realm had become even stronger. The next step was the heavenly master realm. He wouldn't be stingy with anything that would help him step into the heavenly master realm. One side wanted to sign up, while the other side wanted to sharpen their swords. Both sides were equally determined. This didn't reduce the intensity of the battle. On the contrary, it became more and more intense as time passed. Come on. Yixuan became more and more excited as he fought. In his opinion, such a battle would naturally bring great benefits. However, Blood Empress Ling Long was completely shocked. Yixuan's strength was completely beyond her expectations. Not to mention the fact that he had so many tricks up his sleeves. There were sword techniques, fist techniques, hand seals, and so on. There wasn't a single repetition. Such a person had already surpassed the ranks of the Emperor Realm experts. She was about to collapse. Why hasn't such a person entered the Heavenly Master Realm? She had always thought that she was at the peak of the Emperor Lords. However, she now realized that she was wrong. There was actually someone who could break through her limits and break the limits of the Emperor Lords. The longer this battle continued, the more injuries she felt to her foundation. She had forcibly suppressed her injuries and fought with Yixuan until now. Naturally, she had to pay a price to do so. She had to pay a certain price to achieve this. Now that she couldn't get rid of Yixuan in a short period of time, these side effects appeared. Puff! Blood Empress Ling Long spurted out a mouthful of golden blood essence. This mouthful of golden blood essence was the result of tens of thousands of years of cultivation. This was the blood essence of blood essence. Yixuan's continuous attacks made Blood Empress Ling Long spit out blood again. The other Emperor-level creatures felt that there was no more terrifying existence in the world than Yishiwen. Even Blood Empress Ling Long, who was invincible in their hearts, was nothing in front of Yishiwen. Again, Yishiwen shouted loudly. The martial power of his whole body had been raised to the limit. The more he fought, the more his magic power burned, and the clearer his Tao became. Only in such a battle could his strength improve the fastest. The other Emperor-level existences retreated again and again. They didn't dare to approach Yishiwen at all. The entire space had almost turned into a battlefield for the two of them. Yishiwen's attack was too overbearing. Even the weaker Emperor-level existences had the urge to spit out a mouthful of blood from the aftermath of his attack. They could feel the pressure that Blood Empress Ling Long was under. What kind of terrifying existence was that? Just like Blood Empress Ling Long, these Emperor-level creatures were also roaring in their hearts. How could such an existence, who hadn't even reached the Celestial Master stage, be so powerful? Roar! Blood Empress Ling Long was forced into a desperate situation. She let out a loud roar and suddenly erupted again. The martial power that she had been accumulating for a long time finally erupted. She stabbed out with her spear again, overturning the Tao of heaven and earth. Wherever this spear passed, it seemed as if it was going to evolve into a new world. Under the situation where she was forced to her limit, she finally unleashed her unprecedented spear Tao cultivation. Her momentum was invincible, and it seemed as if she was going to reverse the situation. However, in the face of Blood Empress Ling Long's desperate counterattack, Yishiwen wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he met her attack head-on and blasted out a punch. His fist energy evolved into a six-paths wheel in midair. This six-paths wheel fell down on the spot. It was like a long river that contained endless power. Everything was integrated into Yishiwen's fist energy. Everything was done in one go, and the whole space was trembling from the impact of Yishiwen's fist energy. At this moment, Yishiwen was the master of the entire space. No matter how much Blood Empress Ling Long struggled, she was no match for him. Bang! The fist and the spear collided fiercely, and a terrifying light burst out like a supernova explosion. Blood Empress Ling Long finally couldn't hold the spear in her hand anymore. Her palms directly exploded, turning into a rain of blood that splattered all over the sky. This spear couldn't withstand the remaining force, and with a bang, it turned into a bloody mist that spread out in all directions. It was like a bloody meteor shower had fallen from the sky. Puff, puff, puff. The defensive gangshis of several Emperor-class life forms that didn't manage to dodge in time were instantly broken and pierced by the fragments of the blood-colored spear. The other Emperor-level creatures turned pale with fright. Even the aftermath of the battle could occasionally kill them. If they were to stay here, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although they were still reluctant to part with the Law Crystal, they knew that their lives were the most important. If they lost their lives, what use would they have? In particular, the emperors who were severely injured were so scared that they wet their pants. They hurriedly flew away, not daring to covet the Law Crystal. After all, Yishiwen and Blood Empress Ling Long were different. Since they were on the same side, Blood Empress Ling Long couldn't kill them all. Otherwise, she would really offend the public. Even though she was one of the 10 emperors, she couldn't indiscriminately kill innocent people and offend the public. However, Yishiwen was different. He didn't have such concerns. It was natural for the experts of the Fortune God dynasty to fight with the experts of the foreign domains. These people have run away. That's good. It saves me a lot of trouble when the time comes. Ahuang couldn't help but smile when she saw the Emperor-level creatures running away. Her cultivation was far superior to most of the Emperor-level creatures. Even if Yishiwen and Blood Empress Ling Long were to fight, they wouldn't be able to seriously injure her. However, even though she wasn't afraid of so many Emperor-level creatures, it would still be troublesome to deal with them. Fortunately, they seemed to have been frightened by Yishiwen at this time. Ahuang's gaze turned towards the two people who were fighting. She was incomparably glad in her heart. Fortunately, she had joined hands with Yi Shiwen at the last minute. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy for him to take advantage of Blood Empress Ling Long, given his cultivation. He would have been slapped to death by her. At this time, she finally understood why Yi Shiwen didn't care about Blood Empress Ling Long at all. She didn't expect him to hide such amazing strength. Such power had far surpassed any of the powerful monarchs that she had seen before. Even a battle emperor might not be a match for him. What kind of fortuitous encounter did he have to make such amazing progress in such a short period of time? No matter what the truth was, it would shock the world once it was announced. At this time, the situation of the battle between the two of them in the sky was very obvious. Blood Empress Ling Long had forced herself to raise her strength to the peak. Her injuries had completely broken out, and her strength had rapidly retreated. She was no longer as carefree and contented as before. Instead, she was constantly being beaten until she vomited blood. The blood essence that she had cultivated for many years was being continuously vomited out. The blood essence kept flowing out. Blood Empress Ling Long's heart was bleeding. Even if she could escape from this battle, her vitality would be greatly damaged. She wouldn't be able to compete with experts of the same level as her. She didn't know how long it would take for her to recover. But did she have any other way? If she didn't burn her blood essence, she would die faster. She could only retreat while fighting. However, Yi Shiwen was like a maggot in the tarsal bone. He was like a shadow following the body, not giving him the slightest possibility of escaping. Yi Shiwen's continuous attacks made him even more injured. If this continued, he wouldn't even have the ability to escape. You're going too far. Do you really want to fight me with your life? Blood Empress Ling Long roared with all her might. Then fight me with your life. I'd like to see what else you can do. Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. Blood Empress Ling Long was getting weaker and weaker, but he was getting stronger and stronger. After all, he would receive a lot of rewards from the Fortune God dynasty for killing Blood Empress Ling Long, not to mention his wealth. These were the things he needed to break through to the heavenly master realm. Blood Empress Ling Long roared angrily. All the blood essence in her body started to burn. She wanted to fight Yi Shiwen to the death. She had been forced into a dead end. All of her blood essence and the strength she had accumulated for countless years were gathered together and turned into a punch. This punch shook the heavens and the earth. The entire space was trembling and the heavens were crying. It was as if Blood Empress Ling Long had been forced into a dead end. Even the heavens and the earth were crying. The power of the heavens and the earth had been absorbed into one. Take my punch too. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. He didn't dodge. Instead, he also punched towards Blood Empress Ling Long. Boom. The power of both sides had surpassed the limits of a sovereign emperor. In an instant, everything in the world was submerged. The deadlock only lasted for a moment. Yi Shiwen's fist momentum broke through Blood Empress Ling Long's fist attack, which had been launched with all of her blood essence in a split second. It was completely broken in an instant. Yi Shiwen's punch didn't lose any momentum. It landed on Blood Empress Ling Long's body. Bang! Blood Empress Ling Long let out a blood-curdling scream as her body exploded and her nascent soul was destroyed. She could not be more dead. Chapter 3295. Yi Shiwen put away Blood Empress Ling Long's body. He took a look at it. Because of the crazy burning of blood essence, the quality of Blood Empress Ling Long's body was not as good as before. It was roughly equivalent to an ordinary Emperor Lord at the peak of the Ninth Realm. It cannot be compared to the strength of the 10 Emperors. Moreover, the body of the Emperor-level creature was not as good as that of the Emperor-level creature. As time went by, the body of the Emperor-level creature would decay. But in general, it was not a small amount of income, especially the wealth in his inner world. Many of them could be used as raw materials to refine the heaven-seizing pill. Martial Emperor Fellow is really powerful. Congratulations. In the distance, Along took a step forward and arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. She had witnessed Yi Shiwen's amazing strength with her own eyes. She had confirmed that the rumors were not credible because Yi Shiwen was stronger than the rumors said. Among the many rumors, the latest one was that he was strong enough to rival the 10 emperors. Killing the Eaglehorn Emperor was also said to be a difficult victory. However, when she saw it with her own eyes, she realized that his strength was superior to the 10 emperors. The so-called rival of the 10 emperors was just a joke. She was shocked. She could not believe that someone could cultivate to this level and had not entered the Heavenly Master realm. It was beyond a miracle. However, his face was still the same as usual. There was no change in his expression. "It's just a small trick," Yi Shiwen said. "Let's go down and have a look." "Okay." Along first confirmed that there was no one else in this space except for her and Yi Shiwen. Then she nodded. The Emperor-level creatures that were there before had already disappeared without a trace. No one dared to stay and see if Yi Shiwen would kill them. It was rare for the two camps to unite. On the other hand, it was common for the two camps to kill each other when they met. Yi Shiwen landed directly on the altar. Without the obstruction of the martial will, he easily landed on the altar. The entire altar seemed to be made of white marble. It was smooth and without a trace of dust. It was full of a mysterious aura. Huang did not look at the altar. Instead, she headed straight for the nomological crystal below the altar. She looked at the law crystals below. In the end, she didn't take half of them according to the original agreement. Instead, she only took about 30% of the law crystals. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly killed Blood Empress Linglong. Moreover, he had scared off the other Emperor-level creatures. However, she had only stopped the news. Although Yi Shiwen wouldn't break the contract for no reason, she still had the intention of befriending Yi Shiwen. In the face of such an extremely strong powerhouse, no one wouldn't want to befriend him. As for the troubles he had caused, it seemed that it was nothing at all. Yi Shiwen's divine sense spread out and enveloped the entire altar like a circle of tide water. However, Yi Shiwen discovered that after his divine sense entered the altar, it was immediately absorbed by the altar. It was an independent space. Divine sense wouldn't be able to survive in the outside world, but it could completely survive in here. This was a very special space. The martial will from before had also lived in it for countless years. It could still exert such amazing power. Yi Shiwen suddenly had an idea. This altar can store divine senses and martial will. Then, can it store the martial arts attacks left behind by those powerhouses? Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen quickly threw a punch of 6 paths of reincarnation fist and entered the altar. Such a huge movement immediately alarmed Huang. She was also shocked. She quickly looked over and was relieved after seeing that Yi Shiwen didn't make any further moves. Yi Shiwen was completely immersed in the altar at this time. Sure enough, he found that the 6 paths of reincarnation fist that entered the altar didn't disappear. Instead, it was preserved in a special situation. The space inside this altar was indeed very special. Yi Shiwen didn't know who refined it. It was very amazing. Even with Yi Shiwen's ability, he couldn't refine such a space. Ordinary spaces couldn't store such pure attack thoughts at all. It would mean that Yi Shiwen would have another trump card if he could do it. There were many terrifying martial arts intents in this Crystal Valley. These martial arts intents hadn't dispersed even after countless years. Some of them could even injure a heavenly master. Yi Shiwen's strength would undoubtedly increase greatly if he could collect all of them. Although the possibility of using on ordinary days was not high, it was extremely useful to deal with those powerful superpowerhouses. Although it was probably dangerous to collect those terrifying martial arts attacks, it was definitely a supreme means for him. Once used well, the effect was simply unimaginable. Speaking of which, wasn't Yi Shiwen's previous near-death experience targeted by someone using a Celestial Master's means? Otherwise, with his strength, although he didn't have his current strength at that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape unscathed in the face of everyone's pursuit. This was naturally a killer weapon that could be used, but ordinary people couldn't preserve such Celestial Master's means and attacks. Although Yi Shiwen didn't know who refined this altar, it could obviously do this and accommodate those Celestial Master's means. However, it could only be done after the altar was completely refined. Just like the fist energy of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist that he injected into it. Although it could be seen, it had been cut apart and couldn't be controlled. Obviously, it was controlled by this altar. Rise! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and the entire altar rose directly, then became smaller and smaller. Finally, it turned into a stream of light and entered Yi Shiwen's body. A Huang saw this and understood that this altar should also be a good treasure. However, she didn't dare to compete with Yi Shiwen at this time, nor did she want to covet it. The more strength one had, the more treasures one could take. At this time, Yi Shiwen looked at these law crystals. These law crystals were 70% left. Yi Shiwen immediately understood what a Huang meant. He felt a little happy in his heart, but there was no change on his face. He just waved his hand and absorbed all these law crystals into his inner world. Since this time is over, I will leave first, Yi Shiwen said. Fellow Taoist Martial Emperor, please go ahead. However, I still have something to remind you. Recently, the matter of you obtaining the king-level dragon vein has caused an uproar. I'm afraid that many people are planning to cause trouble for you. A Huang couldn't help but remind him. They're just a bunch of clowns. There's nothing to worry about. Yi Shiwen didn't seem to care at all. That's right, I'm worrying too much. Fellow Taoist Martial Emperor is wise and mighty. These clowns are nothing to worry about. A Huang paused. She originally wanted to say that those who dared to target her were the best among the Emperor Lords. They were the super powerhouses who were famous. However, she immediately thought of the horrifying scene when Yi Shiwen had easily killed Blood Empress Ling, long thinking of this. Those people were probably just clowns. Even Blood Empress Ling Long and Emperor Eagle Horn couldn't compare to them. In Yi Shiwen's eyes, they were probably just clowns. In the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks were useless. When we leave the path of creation, I hope that fellow Taoist Martial Emperor can visit the Clear Sky Association. Just treat it as making friends with the Clear Sky Association. A Huang invited. If there were talk about roping in Yi Shiwen now, it wouldn't be an insult to his intelligence. Instead, it would be an insult to his own intelligence. However, at the very least, they had to make such a powerhouse maintain sufficient goodwill towards the Clear Sky Association. This was because she knew very well what the main purpose of the Clear Sky Association was. If these super powerhouses didn't like them, then they would be in real trouble. After leaving the path of creation, Yi Shiwen sighed. If you are still in the mood to invite me to visit you at that time, I will go and have a look. Yi Shiwen thought of the heaven-devouring Demon King who was about to come out of his closed-door training and the Sky Fire Divine Lord who was nowhere to be found. He knew that once he left the path of creation, he was afraid that there would be many battles and troubles. When that time came, he would have offended 2 powerful beings in succession. It was hard to say whether the Clear Sky Association would still dare to have any relations with him. A Huang suddenly recalled that this person in front of her seemed to have offended the heaven-devouring Demon King as well. The heaven-devouring demon race had been greatly offended by this guy. The powerful heaven-devouring demon race had been forced to lower their heads by him. However, the troubles were just the beginning. Although he had killed the old ancestor of the heaven-devouring demon race, there was still the heaven-devouring Demon King who was like the sun in the sky. It would have been fine if the heaven-devouring Demon King hadn't entered the heavenly venerate realm when he came out of his closed-door training. However, if he had entered the heavenly venerate realm, it would have been a disaster for the human race. This extremely powerful man in front of her would probably have died a tragic death. No matter how powerful he was, he still hadn't entered the heavenly venerate realm. If he was just an emperor lord, there was no way he could be compared to a heavenly venerate. It was no wonder that he would say that. At times like this, a friend in need was indeed a friend indeed. However, did they really have such a deep friendship in the past? However, what she didn't know was that the man in front of her had no intention of hiding at all. Instead, he was thinking of ways to prepare his trump card and prepare for a battle with the heaven-devouring Demon King. Not only did he want to protect himself, but he also wanted to make the heaven-devouring demon king pay a heavy price. In fact, he might even want to take his life. Once this idea was spread, it would immediately cause a huge uproar. This was not just an ordinary person's guts. He was simply too bold. Chapter 32:96. However, for Yi Shiwen, this was nothing. This kind of thinking was just normal for him. He had no absolute fear of the so-called stronger people. Ever since he started cultivating, he had always been moving forward against the wind. He did not know how many so-called geniuses and so-called powerhouses he had killed. In his eyes, the Celestial Master was just a goal to achieve in the next stage. It was not worthy of respect at all. Defeating the strong and constantly defeating the stronger was his path forward. Even the fate creation Heavenly Lord, who had single-handedly created the Fortune God dynasty, was not the so-called invincible existence in his eyes. It was just that he had not reached that realm yet. Once there was fear in one's heart, it would be difficult to make further progress. After cultivating to this stage, he increasingly understood that the world was as big as one's heart. This sentence was very true. Since Yi Shiwen said so, Huang no longer said anything. Instead, she said, "If that's the case, then I'll take my leave first. If there's a chance next time, I'll definitely call Martial Emperor." Haha, that's great. It will naturally be great if we cooperate. Yi Shiwen laughed and nodded. He naturally understood Huang's thoughts. If he cooperated with the Clear Sky Association, it would be good if she could get 10% of the law crystals in the end. After all, it was a behemoth, and she was not its master. This was the biggest problem. Although Huang only got 30% of the law crystals in the end, it was already much better than cooperating with the Clear Sky Association. In any case, Huang had her own calculations. She also wanted to step into the Heavenly Master realm one day. In terms of her desire for law crystals, there was no difference between her and others. After bidding farewell to Huang, Yi Shiwen immediately left this space. He was afraid that this news would spread soon. It was not good to stay here for long. Yi Shiwen constantly shuttled through various spaces, often stopping in the space crevices. While looking for the whereabouts of other law crystals, he began to study the law crystals in his hands. Even for celestial masters, law crystals had extraordinary significance. They could help them step into a higher realm, help them cultivate, and help them comprehend. Therefore, it was extremely important for them. This was also why both the Outer Domain and the Fortune God dynasty were trying their best to facilitate the creation of cracks on the path of fate. They also needed to replenish law crystals. He found a crack in the space and casually arranged an array formation to avoid being discovered. Then he began to sit cross-legged. A fist-sized crystal appeared in front of him. A crystal of this size was considered a unit of crystal by many Emperor Lords and Heavenly Venerates. It was already very impressive for an ordinary Emperor Lord to obtain a few units of crystal. Even a colossus like the Fortune Divine Dynasty couldn't find tens of thousands of law crystals every time the path of fortune opened. And Yi Shiwen had more than 1,000 law crystals with him now. It could be said to be a huge fortune. Therefore, he didn't have to carefully maintain the balance of the laws in the law crystal like the others did. For him, time was obviously more important. Yi Shiwen's divine sense penetrated into the law crystal, and he suddenly felt that the scene in front of him had changed. It seemed as if he had entered the interior of the law crystal. The principles had transformed into crystals and had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen in an unprecedented form. When Yi Shiwen's divine sense touched these crystals that had transformed from divine sense, he suddenly felt as if the great Tao had collided and interacted with each other. It made him feel as if his soul was trembling. This was the feeling of a large amount of information flowing into his body. Every law contained a supreme great Tao, but it was originally an invisible existence. Now, it had appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. He only felt that the speed at which he comprehended the great Tao had increased by an unknown amount. Originally, he had the help of the mysterious space, so his speed of comprehension was already very astonishing. However, in this law crystal, his speed of comprehension was even faster. It was like a high-speed machine, and with the help of the mysterious space, it could continuously strip out enough information and pour it into his mind. He didn't know how long this feeling lasted. It felt like a moment, but it also felt like a century had passed. Bang! A muffled groan pulled him back from the state of comprehension. In front of him, the piece of law crystal had directly exploded and turned into a terrifying energy that swept out. It could casually blast an ordinary quasi-emperor to death, but it was nothing for Yi Shiwen. It couldn't even break his defense. However, he still woke up with a start. This law crystal had been completely scrapped. When Yi Shiwen's divine sense penetrated into it just now, he had destroyed the balance within it. This caused the law crystal to lose its delicate balance and finally exploded. Yi Shiwen pinched his fingers and calculated. He knew that he hadn't comprehended this law crystal for a very long time. If it were someone else, perhaps they would feel distressed. However, Yi Shiwen didn't have such thoughts. He immediately took out another piece of law crystal, and it appeared in front of him. He probed it with his divine sense, and suddenly, that mysterious state reappeared in his mind. Not long after, this state was broken again, and only a day had passed in between. Consuming a piece of law crystal in a day. Such a speed could be called squandering. If the other emperors who were carefully comprehending the law crystals knew about this, they would definitely feel distressed. However, this was nothing for Yi Shiwen. That kind of careful comprehension method could indeed last longer, but it would also take a longer time. For him, what he lacked the most was always time. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. During this time, Yi Shiwen had already consumed 1/3 of the law crystals on him. During this process, he hadn't found any other law crystals. These law crystals were very difficult to find. In addition, many powerhouses had already entered the path of creation several times before, and many of them had already been seized by them. They didn't leave anything for the future generations at all. But even so, Yi Shiwen felt that his skills, which he originally thought couldn't improve any further, had actually improved by leaps and bounds in just over a year's time, coupled with the full operation of the mysterious space. For experts like them, the comprehension of laws was almost equivalent to the embodiment of their own strength. The deeper the comprehension, the faster the growth of their strength. It was almost like 1,000 miles in a day. Although he hadn't truly stepped into the heavenly master realm, he was already infinitely close to it. It could be said that his strength had more than doubled compared to his original strength. This was extremely terrifying. Originally, he was already invincible in the Emperor realm. He didn't even care about the likes of the 10 great Emperors. Perhaps only existences like the Battle Emperor could slightly wrestle with him. Now that his strength had doubled, how terrifying was he? If he had cultivated by himself, he wouldn't have been able to improve further, let alone double his strength. But with the law crystals, it was completely different. After all, more than 300 units of law crystals were not wasted. It was already good for ordinary people to have 1 or 2 units. For someone like him who used hundreds of law crystals as a unit, it was simply the behavior of a wastrel. Perhaps some heavenly masters didn't use so many law crystals to advance to the heavenly master realm. However, he didn't care at all. As long as his strength increased, everything would be worth it. Hence, his desire for law crystals increased by another level. As long as he had enough law crystals, it really wouldn't be a dream to step into the heavenly master realm in a short period of time. However, if he wanted to step into the heavenly master realm, just the over 700 units of law crystals he had on hand wouldn't be enough. He would need more to make it possible. However, it was very difficult to find so many. After such a long time, apart from finding so many law crystals on the sacrificial altar, he had only found a few scattered pieces that weren't worth mentioning. After all, law crystals weren't natural treasures, so they couldn't be mass-produced. They could only be produced purely by accident. The collision of different laws could only form law crystals after a mysterious transformation. Most laws would form the most common type of crystal on the path of creation after they collided. Although those crystals were semi-finished products, they were still useless. Hence, he still had to find more law crystals. However, he hadn't used up over 700 units of law crystals yet, so he wasn't in a hurry. Just as he was about to continue his seclusion, he suddenly received a message from the Battle Emperor. He said that he had found the existence of the Night Emperor. Yishuan's spirit was instantly lifted. Finally, it was time to completely eliminate the Night Emperor. Since he had started fighting with the Night Emperor, he had some ideas. At that time, the Night Emperor didn't care about him at all. He was only angry because Yishuan had killed the Gung Metal Tiger Emperor. In essence, he still regarded Yishuan as a nobody. He probably didn't expect that Yishuan would have such achievements today. Otherwise, even if he had to pay a huge price, he would have killed Yishuan in the Battle of Storm City. With Yishuan's current strength, it was impossible for the Night Emperor to pose any fatal threat to him. However, it didn't mean that Yishuan would let such an extremely dangerous existence plot against him. It's time to eliminate the Night Emperor. Chapter 3297. The feud between Yishuan and the Night Emperor had been going on for many years. Previously, Yishuan had to avoid the Night Emperor's sharp edge. However, there was no need for that now. Instead, he had to take the initiative to find the Night Emperor and eliminate this future trouble. Otherwise, even though he wasn't afraid of the Night Emperor's constant scheming, even Yishuan didn't dare to say that he would be flawless. It was inevitable that there would be a loophole. If the Night Emperor seized the opportunity, it might cause unpredictable consequences. Therefore, Yishuan decided to eliminate the Night Emperor as soon as possible to eliminate future trouble. Yishuan quickly rushed to meet up with the coordinates left by the Battle Emperor. Soon, he entered a plain full of lava. There were flowing and erupting lava everywhere. It was as if he had entered a world of pure flames. In the center of this plain, a figure was moving up and down. It was none other than the Battle Emperor. The Battle Emperor's aura was faintly integrated with the entire heaven and earth. Although he was in the path of creation, the heaven law of the entire space could still be used by him. One could imagine how powerful he was. Beside the Battle Emperor, a figure was hidden and didn't show his face. However, how could he hide from Yishuan's eyes? It was the Butterfly Sovereign. After all these years, the Butterfly Sovereign had successfully entered the second realm. Although the speed of her improvement couldn't be compared to Yishuan's, it was still considered very fast. Martial Emperor is here. The Battle Emperor opened his eyes. At the same time that Yishuan arrived, he had also sensed that the entire space had fallen into his control. "Greetings, Battle Emperor, Butterfly Sovereign," said Yishuan with a bow. "Since you're here, this matter is more than half done," said the Battle Emperor with a laugh. Yishuan smiled and nodded. Then he asked, "May I know why did you choose this place as the battlefield?" "That's because it's said that there are law crystals here. Based on the information I've received, Yi Huang and the others will be here very soon. As long as we wait here, we'll be able to kill him completely." The Battle Emperor's determined face was filled with a cold, murderous intent. "This time, we can finally get rid of this bastard. But is it just us?" Yishuan asked. The Battled Arch shook his head and said, "Of course not. Although Taoist Martial Emperor is the absolute main force, I have also called 2 other Taoist Martial Emperors over just to be safe. Even if the Night Emperor has 3 heads and 6 arms, he will not be able to escape. He will definitely die here." Speak of the devil. Not long after, a figure stepped on a beam of light and appeared in front of everyone. It was a sovereign emperor who was hidden in the void, leaving only a shadow behind. His strength was great, and he had already reached the 9th level. He was extremely powerful. "Tai Isane Emperor, you're here. That's great." The Battle Emperor laughed out loud and introduced himself. "Tai Isane Emperor, let me introduce you. This is Taoist Martial Emperor. Taoist Martial Emperor. This is Taoist Martial Emperor of the Southern region. His chaos divine technique is unparalleled in the world. It's hard to find a match for him." The Tai Isage Emperor just nodded, then looked at Yishuan. Yishuan was quite famous recently. He more or less knew some news, but he couldn't judge the outcome of many of the news. However, just from what he heard, he already understood that Yi Shiwen in front of him was not an ordinary person. Yi Shiwen also nodded at the same time to show his respect. Although the Tai Isane Emperor was powerful, his strength was at most similar to the Void Emperor. He couldn't compare with the Eagle Horn Emperor, Blood Empress Ling Long, and the others, let alone the Battle Emperor. Not long after, another figure condensed in the void. It was like a gust of wind rolling into the space. The constantly erupting lava was rolled up, forming a huge fire tornado. Taoist Martial Emperor, let me introduce you. This is Taoist Qi Emperor. Taoist Qi Emperor, this is Taoist Martial Emperor, who has been in the limelight recently. This person was also a famous expert. However, he came from the northern region. Among the many emperors in the northern region, he was considered one of the top experts. He was also a super expert who had entered the 9th level. The Battle Emperor was able to recruit these two experts at will. His network was indeed very wide. However, he didn't know that these two people were also very shocked that the Battle Emperor was able to recruit Yi Shiwen, who had been in the limelight recently. Yi Shiwen's recent reputation was too big, especially since he had killed Blood Empress Ling Long. The news of Yi Shiwen killing Blood Empress Ling Long had spread after those Emperor-level creatures had fled in different directions. Many people didn't dare to believe it at first. It was a very big matter for an ordinary 9th-level expert to die, not to mention a terrifying existence like Blood Empress Ling Long. The 10 monarchs were terrifying experts who practically stood at the pinnacle of the imperial monarch realm. For such experts, besides dying naturally, the probability of them dying again was very low, and it was practically impossible. It was very rare to encounter such an occurrence in tens of millions of years. But now such a thing had happened. Yi Shiwen didn't surround or ambush him. He just killed him head-on. Such strength shocked many people. These rumors also mentioned that Blood Empress Ling Long had been seriously injured before she was finally killed by him. However, everyone reckoned that Yi Shiwen had already far surpassed the strength of an ordinary peak sovereign emperor. Now that such a new and fierce expert had been invited, the Night Emperor might not be able to escape this time. As for the grudge between Yi Shiwen and the Night Emperor, they didn't know, especially when Yi Shiwen and the Night Emperor had just become enemies. In their eyes, although Yi Shiwen wasn't an ant, he was still insignificant. Therefore, they didn't know. Hence, they could only treat the Battle Thearcha's reputation as boundless. This kind of shady business of assassinating a top-notch expert wasn't something that just anyone would dare to accept, because if they were not careful, they might completely form a death grudge with the Night Sovereign. If it wasn't for the fact that they owed the Battle Thearch so many favors back then, they wouldn't have come here. Even though they belonged to two different factions and were natural enemies, experts of this level were no ordinary ants. So, killing them was no big deal. The Battle Thearch had become a Thearch very early on. Thus, although he appeared to be very quiet and did not reveal anything, he actually had a very wide network of connections and foundations. The Tai Sage Emperor and the Qi Emperor were only two of them. In this regard, even Yi Shiwen was far inferior. Yi Shiwen also slightly released a part of his aura, lest these two people have any ideas that they shouldn't have. Sure enough, both of them were shocked. With Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, he was infinitely close to the Heavenly Master level. Just a part of his aura was enough to make them hesitate in taking action. Moreover, they were all comrades in the same trench. Some ideas disappeared without a trace before they could form. Senior Battle Emperor, did you call us here because you already know that the Night Emperor will come here? The Qi Emperor had just arrived, but he asked bluntly. Yes, as far as we know, the Night Emperor will definitely appear here. At that time, you two will be responsible for stopping them. Don't let the Night Emperor escape. The Martial Emperor and I will personally take care of the rest, said the Battle Emperor directly. Obviously, his expectations for Yi Shiwen were far greater than his expectations for the Qi Emperor and the Tai Sage Emperor. Both of them nodded. They didn't have anything to say. After all, strength spoke in this world. They wouldn't have anything to say as long as Yi Shiwen displayed sufficient strength. Moreover, they weren't willing to stand on the front line and contend against a formidable opponent like the Yi Emperor. No problem. At that time, we will be responsible for sealing the surroundings. He will not have a chance to escape, said the Tai Yi Sage Emperor directly. Well, in that case, let's hide first. I have already arranged a formation here. As long as we act carefully, even if the Night Emperor is next to us, he will not be able to find us, said the Battle Emperor. The three nodded. Then, like the Butterfly Emperor, they pinched a seal on the spot and disappeared on the spot. The Battle Emperor was also a good teacher. He pinched a seal, and his spiritual power surged up. Then, he disappeared on the spot without a trace. After Yi Shiwen entered the range of the formation, he did not waste any time. Instead, he continued his closed-door cultivation. Now, he could enter the state of closed-door cultivation at any time and strive to save every minute and every second. The great emperors looked at each other. At this moment, they seemed to understand a little how this person could improve to such an amazing level in such a short period of time. Apart from his numerous fortuitous encounters and his outstanding innate talent, this kind of painstaking cultivation attitude was also indispensable. Although they also practiced painstakingly, they couldn't use all of their time to practice at all times. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to improve to such a level. After a long time, about 10 days, the entire space began to shake violently. It began to shake like boiling water. At this moment, the entire space was like a picture that had been torn open by someone. Then a figure flew out. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly opened wide. Who else could this person be if not Yi Huang? After so many years, the Night Emperor's cultivation had become more profound, and his aura was even more unfathomable. However, compared to Yi Shiwen's improvement, it was not worth mentioning. In the past, Yi Shiwen only felt that the Night Emperor was unfathomable and unpredictable like the Heavenly Emperor. But now, his strength was in Yi Shiwen's eyes. There were 3 Emperor-level creatures around the Night Emperor. Each of them was as big as a mountain and had an extremely valiant aura. However, in Yi Shiwen's eyes, they were not worth mentioning. They were only in the 4th realm and 5th realm. They were nothing at all. The prey has fallen into the trap. It's time to act. Chapter 3298. The prey has fallen into the trap. It's time to act. Yi Shiwen said softly. Yi Huang didn't seem to notice anything and continued to advance. Around him, the mountain-like emperors were still chatting and laughing. They seemed to be very excited about the law crystals that were about to fall into their hands. They didn't know that they were about to die. And just at this moment, a gigantic hand covered the entire sky above the entire space. It then slapped down furiously, not giving Yi Huang and the others any chance of escaping at all. Yi Huang's expression changed slightly, and then a wave of the laws of darkness instantly erupted from his body. It actually formed a huge dark hand as well, and it completely enveloped the place where they stood. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out, and Yi Huang only felt the air trembling. The places that were not protected by his dark hand had already been completely crushed under the attack of this huge hand. Endless lava was spurting out, and it was like the scene of the end of the world. Who is it? Come out, Yi Huang said with an extremely solemn expression. Yi Huang, today is the day you die. Accompanied by a loud laughter, the Battle Emperor took a step forward and stared at Yi Huang. The humiliation you brought to the Fortune God dynasty will be washed away with your blood today. Beside Yi Huang, Yi Shiwen and a few others also appeared one by one, almost faintly surrounding Yi Huang and the others. The humiliation I brought to the Fortune God dynasty? Ha ha ha! Battle Emperor, you're really loyal to the Fortune God dynasty. Even now, you still want to kill me. Yi Huang said with a cold smile. What do you foreign creatures know? The Fortune God dynasty is the territory that the Fortune God dynasty conquered by the Fortune God monarch alone. We won't tolerate foreign creatures like you to be so presumptuous. Since you dare to be presumptuous, you should have known that this day would come. The Battle Emperor said coldly. The Battle Emperor's words made Yi Shiwen look at him in a different light. At this moment, he finally understood why the Battle Emperor wanted to kill Yi Huang, even though it was a little strenuous and unrewarding. The Battle Emperor's strength was not comparable to the current Yi Shiwen. Even if he wanted to kill Yi Huang, he would have to go through a lot of trouble. He would have to use his connections and resources to kill Yi Huang. It was too strenuous and unrewarding. Many years had passed since Yi Huang's defection. He had never seen any of the 10 great emperor monarchs so determined to kill Yi Huang. Now he understood everything. Perhaps he didn't understand that kind of feeling. The Battle Emperor had accompanied the Fortune Heavenly Lord to pacify the chaotic times and establish the territory of the Fortune God dynasty. He had witnessed the birth of the Fortune God dynasty with his own eyes. This kind of feeling wasn't something an outsider like Yi Shiwen could understand. Although the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch had disappeared, the spirit he had left behind was still influencing the Battle Emperor and the other old officials who had followed him to quell the chaos. How foolish. Even the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch is no longer here, yet you're still foolishly loyal. A look of disdain appeared on Yi Huang's face. In his opinion, such feelings were merely a form of blind loyalty. Yi Huang, no matter what, you will not escape death today. Say no more. The Battle of the Arch hollered as his aura was released circle by circle. It was rising continuously, causing even the sky to change color. Almost the entire world was under his control. Before Yi Huang came, he had already refined this space for his own use. At this moment, his power had completely manifested. Ha ha ha, Battle Emperor, do you think you can kill me alone? Yi Huang laughed loudly. Facing the Battle Emperor who had unleashed his strength, he was not afraid at all. What if I join you? Yi Huang, didn't you say that not only would you kill me, but you would also exterminate the human race? Now, I will personally send you on your way. Yi Shiwen's figure emerged and stood in front of everyone. Yi Shiwen, I still want to turn your bones into ashes and let you die without a burial place. Yi Huang said through gritted teeth. Because of Yi Shiwen, his favorite disciple, Tiger Emperor Gongjin, had fallen. Even for an existence like him, it was difficult to nurture an Emperor Lord-level disciple. The Battle Emperor had been an emperor for countless years and had taught many disciples. However, only the Butterfly Emperor had succeeded in the end. It was obvious how difficult it was. Every Emperor Lord took a different path. Having an Emperor Lord-level teacher would certainly give an unparalleled advantage in the early stages. However, later on, it would be like shackles and restraints that would constantly be added to the body. It would become heavier and heavier, and eventually prevent him from achieving the Tao. This was because he would become more and more similar to his teacher and be influenced by his teacher's Tao. This Gung Metal Tiger Emperor had the potential to enter the 7th realm, but he had died at Yi Shiwen's hands. Naturally, he wanted to skin Yi Shiwen alive. Moreover, because of Yi Shiwen, he had suffered a defeat in the Battle of Storm City. He had paid a huge price to lure the Battle Emperor away from his territory. In the end, all his efforts had gone to waste because of Yi Shiwen. This kind of hatred was truly a blood feud. However, I'm afraid you won't have the chance in the future. I will personally send you to hell, Yi Shiwen said coldly. When he looked at Yi Huang, it was as if he was looking at a dead man. Ha ha ha. Do the two of you really think that you can kill me? Yi Huang laughed loudly. Do you really think that I dare to come here without any preparation? Battle Emperor, I already know that you want to kill me. In the past tens of millions of years, you have organized more than 10 encirclements against me. Unfortunately, all of them failed. Do you think that I will let my guard down after entering the path of creation? Yi Huang laughed loudly. Do you think that I don't know what you are thinking? You found someone to calculate my whereabouts. How do you know that I'm not also plotting against you? You want to kill me, but I also want to kill you. Especially you, Yi Shiwen. I've heard about your affairs. It would have been beyond my expectations if the Battle Emperor hadn't found you. I knew that the two of you must have joined hands to secretly plot to kill me. So, How could I not have made any preparations? Yi Huang laughed out loud. His expression was a little arrogant, and there was also a little excitement and craziness. You don't have to talk big. Are you trying to scare us? That's impossible. No matter what, you must die today, Battle Emperor said coldly. Oh no, he's stalling for time. Yi Shiwen reacted instantly. He seemed to have understood Yi Huang's plan. So what if you understand? Don't even think of escaping today. You're not the only ones who have a plan. Yi Huang shouted coldly. At this moment, a figure appeared from the void. In an instant, it had already turned into a ball of light and pierced through Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen seemed to have suffered a serious injury. He directly exploded from the middle and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Who is this? How is this possible? Battle Emperor's eyes widened in disbelief. Although he did not dare to say that he had a 100% understanding of Yi Shiwen's strength, he was very clear that Yi Shiwen was probably stronger than him. Yi Shiwen was at the peak of the Emperor realm. How could such a person be pierced through and killed in an instant? Everyone else was also dumbfounded. They did not dare to believe it. What kind of joke was this? Although they had only felt the tip of the iceberg of Yi Shiwen's strength, they had already confirmed that it was extremely terrifying and powerful. How could he be killed in an instant? Immediately after, a silhouette wrapped in boundless lightning appeared before everyone. It was a man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. He was extremely skinny and looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind. However, no one dared to underestimate him. His body was covered in an extremely terrifying power. You are the Electric Lord. Battle Emperor almost immediately recognized the identity of the person who had come. He suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. It was not only the Battle Emperor. Everyone else also had the same feeling of wanting to suck in a breath of cold air. It was because they had already remembered the identity of the person who had come. Electric Lord. He is actually the Electric Lord. Didn't he die after failing to break through to the Heavenly Lord realm? He is actually still alive now. The Qi Emperor sucked in a breath of cold air as his body trembled. How could he not know of the Lightning Lord's fame? Although he had never seen the Lightning Lord in person, he knew that when he was still an ant that had yet to become a sovereign, the Lightning Lord was already a terrifying existence at the peak of the Sovereign Emperor realm. By the time he became an emperor, the Electric Lord had already disappeared and never appeared again. It was said that he had died after failing to break through to the Heavenly Lord realm. No one doubted the authenticity of this news because there was no need to. There were many people who died while trying to break through to the Heavenly Lord realm. The Electric Lord was not the only one. It was just like when a quasi-emperor tried to break through to the Emperor realm. Even those extraordinary peak quasi-emperors who were favored by the heavens could not succeed in breaking through to the Heavenly Lord realm. Therefore, many people who had reached the peak of the Emperor Lord did not dare to act rashly without confidence. Among them was an existence like the Battled Arch. He had been a peak Emperor Lord for many years, but he had never tried to break through to the Heavenly Venerate realm. Therefore, it could be said that if one wanted to break through to the Heavenly Lord realm, it was either success or death. And now, they saw the Electric Lord again. This meant that he was actually not dead. There was no need to say how terrifying this was. Just thinking about it made their hair stand on end. Even in battle, the Arch wasn't any different. He felt a boundless power crushing over. It was absolute suppression. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.